If we could start by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Representative Stats, if you'd lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'm going to have the members introduce themselves, starting with you, Representative Rigby.
Good morning. Representative Jim Rigby, Cambria, Somerset County, 71st District.
Good morning, everyone. Representative Robert Ledbetter, the 109th District, representing Columbia County.
Good morning, Representative Shelby Labs, representing the 143rd Legislative District here in Bucks County.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Craig Stats, representing the 145th Legislative District, not too far from here in Upper Bucks County.
Representative Casey Tomlinson, I represent the 18th District in Lower Bucks County.
Representative Josh Kale, 15th Legislative Districts, Beaver and Washington counties.
I'm Representative Kristen Marcel of the 170th District of Middle Bucks County. You're currently in my district, and also Senator Ferry's district. Just wanted to welcome everyone to lovely Northampton, and we appreciate you being here today.
Good morning. I'm Representative Joe Hogan. I represent the 142nd District, which includes the best part of Northampton Township, as well as Lower Southampton and Middletown Township. Thanks, everyone.
State Representative Mark Gillen, representing the 128th Legislative District in Berks County. I am formerly of Bucks County.
Representative David Rowe, the 85th Legislative District, Union, Snyder, Juniata, and Mifflin counties.
Does not look like at this point in time anybody's joining us online, but there might end up being people also joining us online. If that occurs, and I recognize that, I will make sure I give those individuals an opportunity to introduce themselves. I also wanted to say thank you and good to see you, Senator Ferry, for being here. We love Representative Hogan in the House, but we do certainly miss you being there as well, so thank you for being here. Without further ado, I'd like to open it up for opening statements to Representative Tomlinson.
Thank you, Chairman Kale, and thank you to the Policy Committee for joining us here in Bucks County. I'm State Representative Casey Tomlinson. Like I said, I represent the 18th District, which includes Bensound Township and Humeville Borough. I border the city of Philadelphia, and given that proximity, my district has seen an increase in crime in our area, a majority of which is not even committed by Bensound residents, but by individuals crossing over the border from Philadelphia. Our Bensound Public Safety Director, Bill McVeigh, is here with us today to testify and explain in more depth the amount of crime we are dealing with due to the failed policies of Philadelphia. As a rep, my #1 goal is always to support my district, and when I was first elected, I got a rude awakening on how bad the crime issue had become. Luckily, in Bensound, we have the best and most accredited police department in the state. They work around the clock and go above and beyond for the residents of the 18th District. After sitting down with then Public Safety Director Fred Horan and now Public Safety Director Bill McVeigh, we secured funding and passed legislation to make sure they have the tools they need to keep our community safe. But we are here today because the fight against crime is nowhere near over. There is so much more to be done, and it is beyond time to address these issues, because it is clear that our cities are spiraling out of control, businesses are leaving, people don't feel safe, our police are being targeted, and innocent lives are being lost. Currently, I have 6 pieces of legislation that are drafted or in the process of being drafted to address multiple issues that face my community. One is HB 1596, mandatory jail time for illegal possession of a firearm, which Senator Ferry has the same bill in the Senate. HB 1696, theft of mail, with Representative Kristen Marcel. Street racing with Representative Joe Hogan. And we just dropped an anti-looting package with Representative White and Representative Hogan. My 2 bills in that package specifically would create a criminal offense for those who utilize social media to incite violence, and the second would provide more teeth to youth curfews, giving the police the ability to charge juveniles whose clear and obvious intention is to commit serious crime against people or property. And lastly, catalytic converter legislation, which would give police the ability to put those stealing catalytic converters in jail. With that, I'll turn it back over to Chairman Kale. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I wanted to thank you, Chairman Kale, for agreeing to hold this important hearing here in Northampton, the heart of Bucks County, which is experiencing what many consider a massive spillover effect of crime from Philadelphia. As our testifiers will attest to today, criminals do not limit their activities to a single location. After targeting the homes and businesses in their own city, they move on to the suburbs for new opportunities. Bucks County's proximity to the city, with a number of roads and highways that provide fast entrance and exits from communities like Bensalem and Upper Southampton, are facilitating these criminals' movement between the city and suburbs. Over the years, we've seen spikes in a number of crimes, from robberies and retail theft to the theft of packages off front porches. Today, we will receive an update from local public safety officials on what crimes are growing, who is committing them, and how local law enforcement is targeting the offenders. As we know all too well, the district attorney in Philadelphia is committed to a lax treatment of felons and refuses to prosecute crimes to the fullest extent allowed by law. What we want to learn today is how our police and prosecutors are making up for the failures in Philadelphia and what we can do to help support them. Thank you, Chairman.
I'd also like to recognize Chairman Gillen, who is here. He's the chairman of the Emergency Preparedness and Veterans Affairs Committee. Chairman, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you very much. I'm enormously pleased to be here and looking much forward to the testimony. I would say, as much as anything else, I'm here as a former Bucks County, and many years ago, my parents came from Philadelphia and New York for a better life in Bucks County. I think it's still very possible. We want to make sure that this legislation augments what we're all interested in, which is public safety. Not that far from here, though, many, many years ago, I was a correctional officer at Bucks County Prison when it was on Pine Street, right in Doylestown Borough. So I'm dating myself a little bit here. 30 years as emergency medical technician, and I was also a university police officer. So to me, this is personal, and I am indeed co-sponsoring legislation that Joe and Kristen and Casey and Shelby and Craig are supporting, and I think we can make progress on the public safety issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you know, this Bucks County delegation that we have here, they're absolute leaders on these issues, on crime preventions. And as a father, I appreciate it, because I do have a concern for my children and the next generation that they are growing up in a world where actions just don't have consequences. You see what's happening in Philadelphia. There's an election occurring in Allegheny County as well, where you could end up with a similar situation in Allegheny County with a district attorney that just refuses to apply law. And life isn't Nintendo. You can't just press reset and start over. Actions have consequences, and this delegation here recognizes that. Representative Tomlinson, Representative Marcel, Representative Hogan, Stats, Shelby, Representative Lab, sorry. Absolute leaders on law enforcement issues. They've been doing it not just for the last couple of months. They've been doing it since, at least since we've been in office, which is now 5 years. So very much pleased to be here to talk about these issues. And we have two panels today. Our first panel is about Bucks County crime trends, and our second panel is a public safety perspective. If the testifiers could limit their testimony to 3 to 5 minutes at most, we would like as much time as possible for Q&A. Our first panel is Jennifer Shorn. She's the first assistant district attorney for Bucks County, and the sheriff of Bucks County, Fred Herron. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful for all of you to invite. Thank you. I want to thank all of you for having us. I'm so grateful to hear that Bucks County, that they're leaders in preventing crime and forward thinking in how we continue to be the county that we all love. So for starters, I've been a prosecutor for 24 years in this county. I'm first assistant under Matt Weintraub. I could not be more grateful for this opportunity to work with Matt and to ascend to his role when he ascends to the bench. The reality is this is the county I grew up in. This is the county I chose to work in. We have 39 police departments, some of which are represented here today, and they are truly the best of the best. I mean, some of the officers that I grew up with as a young prosecutor are now chiefs of the respective departments in this county, and we are very fortunate. There's no question that the crime spree in Philadelphia spills over into border towns and border counties. Thankfully, we're able to address that, but that does not mean we should accept that this is how we should live our life. So, Representative Tomlinson, you spoke about catalytic converter thefts and proposed legislation. I could not be more grateful. We attend regular monthly crime meetings. I have the opportunity to attend with the finest detectives in Bucks County, and about 2 years ago, I noticed that the theme constantly was every township, every municipality was suffering from catalytic converter thefts. They're misdemeanor crimes. It is the equivalent of if someone opened your car door when it was unlocked and scooping out your change in your console. However, the invasive nature of this crime, someone comes into your driveway or to you, if you live in a condo, to where your car is parked, they come underneath your car and saw out the catalytic converter and renders your car useless, and it's so invasive, and it's the same as theft from a motor vehicle. There's no deterrent. What we learned is they're organized. This is a corrupt organization. This is not just an individual who's a hack at, stealing a crime of opportunity. These are organized crimes. However, because of the fact that an individual will be arrested, they'll go into the correctional facility and out on bail the next day, and oftentimes we never see them. They fail to appear. So we never are able to successfully prosecute if the penalty is not severe enough. The calculus when determining bail, so it starts before even the punitive aspect of sentencing. It starts with initially up front. They're not even getting held in any capacity, so they're out back in the community and fail to appear to address their warrant. So the fact that there is proposed legislation to correct that is music to my ears. It is a plight on all of our resources, day in and day out. In fact, Northampton occasionally hosts the crime meetings. Lower South typically hosts the Lower Southampton, the crime meetings. And as the resources are being devoted to these thefts, homicides are happening. And these same detectives who have to investigate some of the most brutal homicides are getting spread so thin because they're dealing with, a rash of catalytic converter thefts. I'm super proud to say that about 1.5 years ago, after hearing this, we put those cases into our investigative grand jury and went straight to the top and got the corrupt organization. And I want to state the stats. So on average, Ben Salem and Chief McVeigh may speak to this, but they were averaging 15 to 20, if not higher, a month. And after our raid 4 months ago, the last 4 months, there were 4 the first month, 1 theft, and then 0 last month. That speaks to, the ability to collaborate in the community we work with. But imagine if we had the ability to charge felonies. I mean, we would have much more teeth. So that's a perfect example of one of the biggest drains on our resources. One of the other things I would like to mention, I'm going to be mindful of the time, is the drugs that we're seeing right now. Everyone knows about the opioid epidemic, but what we're also seeing now is xylazine. And xylazine is a non-scheduled, it's called Tranq. It's a non-scheduled drug that was intended for veterinary use. And we literally have people with gaping wounds whose detox lasts, 7 days that are medically, literally knocking on death's door. As we all know, people with addiction, it goes hand in hand. Crimes occur as a result to support that addiction. Obviously, we believe in recovery and we believe in certain levels of rehabilitation, but when you're committing crimes to support your addiction, that's a problem for all of us. So I know Sheriff Herron's going to speak more to xylazine and the issues, how it's impacting our ability to staff corrections. I won't touch on that since Sheriff Herron will, but that is a real problem. That is a trend we're seeing. We also have a big concern. About 10 years ago, meth was not on our radar. Methamphetamine had died off. Bucks County, I guess in the 80s, was one of the biggest methamphetamine capitals in the country. Methamphetamine is a central nervous system stimulant. So opioids bring you down. It's a depressant. Typically, you don't have a lot of violent crimes from someone just ingesting, an opioid or another, like Xanax, another central nervous system depressant. But a stimulant, we're seeing violent rapes, we're seeing violent homicides, all the result of an individual taking these drugs that have a correlation to sexual aggression and physical aggression. I don't know if I wanted to touch briefly on the carjackings. Am I over? Okay.
No, you're good.
No, good? Okay. I'll touch on briefly the carjackings. Obviously, all of us know the city of Philadelphia it's been frightening, the number of carjackings. I will say we started to see a spillover in Bucks County. Thankfully, because the outstanding police work that the men and women in our law enforcement do, it has not been a significant problem. But on occasion, we do have your violent armed robbery and armed carjackings. So that is obviously another concern. I will turn it over to Sheriff Herron because I don't want to use any more time. Thank you.
Can I yield my time?
You can.
Good. I think we're still morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to come here. My name is Fred Herron. I'm the current sheriff of Bucks County, going on my second year as sheriff. I've been in Bucks County since 1987. I'm very old. When I got hired in Bensalem, and I only go back a little bit on the story. Originally from New York City, where I was born and raised, left New York to come to Pennsylvania in '82 to go to college. And in 1983, 1984, my parents left abruptly New York City. The reason why, there was a triple homicide outside their house. Crack cocaine was born 1983, 1984. Birthplace crack cocaine, New York City, and it became very violent, the city. And then years have gone on. Obviously, I came here, and I was a police officer in Bensalem for 36 years. The last 16 of those years as the chief of police or the director in Bensalem, and then became the sheriff of Bucks County. But now we're starting to see what we saw with crack cocaine in 1983. We're starting to see that come back, as you heard from the district soon-to-be district attorney. Trank and methamphetamine on the rise. So I just wanted to give you a little background on my perspective of being here in Bucks County. Bucks County, as you know, is an amazing place to live with over 600,000 people. From small towns on the Delaware River, from Bristol Borough, New Hope, and beyond. Population served by various businesses, shopping districts. Route 1, the number one casino on the East Coast of the United States, known for its national beauty and its proximity to bordering cities like New York and Philadelphia. Makes it a great place to work and live. However, these big cities can also pose problems to our county, specifically Philadelphia, which sits on our southern border and has experienced major crime increases in the last year. The lawlessness and civil unrest present there have had a direct effect on Bucks County. Last year alone, I did crime comparisons to the last 2 years, Bucks County has experienced major crime increases overall, with crime up 22.7% in robberies in 1 year. Crime up 17.1% in sexual assaults, which the district attorney alluded to. 32.9% increase in burglary, a 21.8% in thefts, and a 30.6% increase in auto theft, and an 18.7% overall increase in major crimes, which we refer to as Part 1 crimes. When people riot and destroy in Philadelphia, Bucks County must be prepared. You often hear the phrase, crime knows no borders, and this is so true in this situation. When individuals riot and destroy in Philadelphia, they tend to work their way north. The problem does not end there. Police, sheriffs, and corrections departments continue to see a reduced number of law enforcement applicants, making it difficult, extremely difficult, to staff and protect our communities. In 1986, when I took the test in Bensalem, there were 1,400 people. Last time I left Bensalem was probably about 125 people took the test. So you could see the problem, and this is plagued by what's going on in the country and law enforcement not the the job or the career that it once was because of what's being portrayed. Drugs continue to be on the rise, fueled by open borders in our country. The ease of American citizens to get drugs is beyond the human imagination. New drugs like xylazine, aka Trank, is its street name, is increasingly prevalent and plaguing our communities everywhere. Not only has this problem had a direct effect on the crime rate, which the district attorney alluded to, but the law enforcement's response. Detox now for xylazine is 7 days and beyond, where detox traditionally for drugs is about 72 hours. It has the xylazine and the other drugs that it's mixed with has profound effects on the human body, attacking every organ. So when criminals are being arrested by the great job that the law enforcement's doing, they get charged by the great job the district attorney's office is doing, and then the judges in Bucks County are setting some decent bails to keep them off the street and keep our citizens safe. It's not so easy to get them into jail because of all the medical problems. This results in extended hospital stays and treatment for the 7 days that I talked about, if not longer. How does this affect the criminal justice system? Due to short-staffed jails and liability concerns across the government agencies, local law enforcement is often faced with watching prisoners prior to incarceration for extended periods of time, days, sometimes weeks. It's either that or cut them loose and put them back on the streets, which is really not an option in my book. This prevents the police office from stopping crime, yet it does worse. It prevents them from responding to your 911 call. We in Bucks County and law enforcement try to hold the line against crime as best as possible. When Philadelphia criminals commit crimes in Bucks County, their reception is much different here. They are arrested, prosecuted, and if convicted, go to jail. I've been in law enforcement for over 38 years now. This is the only profession in the world that responds to your needs within minutes, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, on Thanksgiving Day and Christmas morning, even when the Phillies are in the playoffs. We respond. We respond without question and without giving you a bill. I use the following metaphor. I've used it many times before, but I think it's most fitting today. We in law enforcement continue to provide the buckets for the leaky faucet that is crime. Crime and everything that's crime is affecting right now. Our community is plagued with this crime, drugs, and lack of support and staff, known as the leaky faucet. One day the pipe will burst and there will not be enough buckets.
Thank you. Representative Tomlinson.
I just want to thank you both so much for being here. And regarding to that drug trank, we actually just last week, our colleague Representative Carl Metzger just did a bill to try and address those issues. So hopefully that'll get through the Senate and on the governor's desk as soon as possible. But I just wanted to touch on what obstacles and to cooperation exist between Philadelphia and the surrounding areas as far as prosecuting crime.
I can speak to this a little bit. There are clear obstacles. We have to, if a crime occurs in Bucks County and then bleeds into Philadelphia, which occasionally it does, and we recently had a homicide where that was exactly it. It was a homicide of an elderly woman with dementia by her own family member. And we never had a problem picking up the phone, and you have to work together to agree as to what jurisdiction is going to assume prosecution. And you usually decide on resources and who's best suited to get the best outcome. We had to fight to have Philadelphia give us the homicide. The attempted murder started in Bucks, and then he was not successful at killing his own mother, and she was ultimately murdered and shot to death just over the border in Philadelphia. Clearly, Bucks County knows we're going to prosecute this case to the fullest extent, and we can't trust what's going to happen in Philadelphia. We literally had to fight and wait days before we finally, got approval to McPhail, it's called, their portion of the case, so we could prosecute in Bucks County. That's unheard of. Every other collar county, I pick up Montgomery County, Delaware County, Lehigh, it would be instant, the communication and the cooperation. That is not Philadelphia police, I need to be clear. The men and women in Philadelphia working on the streets and doing their job are outstanding, but they have limited resources and they do not have the relationship with their DA's office that we do in Bucks County. So that's a real problem.
If I may just piggyback, one of the other issues in Philadelphia is for the follow-up on investigations, and I don't know what the policy is today in Bensalem because I'm no longer the chief, but I'm sure Chief McVeigh will speak to it. But prior to my leaving Ben Salem, I was nervous about officers doing follow-up on investigations because you're not dealing with a Matt Weintraub, you're dealing with a Krasner, and things go wrong in law enforcement. It's not an exact science. Officers, I could tell you how many days that we would do internal investigations and review a videotape from body camera over and over and over, and I still couldn't conclude what happened. And that poor officer had 2 seconds to make a decision, and he did not get to go to a replay like you do in pro sports. He or she had to make a decision, and there was no replay. Stop, Mr. Criminal, before we do anything else. Let me just see what's happening. It doesn't work that way. So I was actually very nervous about our officers having to take action in Philadelphia and being left to Krasner to make decisions upon their actions. So we really backed out a lot of investigations that had anything to do with the city of Philadelphia. But as the district attorney had alluded to, the men and women of Philadelphia police do an amazing job with the lack of support that they get, and they're still out there every day.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your service to our community as well. I noticed that both of you in your testimony mentioned xylazine and some of the issues that we're seeing with that. Representative Tomlinson mentioned the bill that just passed the House last week, which is helpful. A number of us actually have started working on bills in this area for more on the kind of awareness and education. Representative Hogan actually is co-sponsoring a bill relating to looking at street drugs so that we have more of like a forward-thinking way to see what's coming. So there are a number of things that I would love to get your thoughts on, if there are other areas that would be helpful for you, because I think what I'm hearing locally from people, sometimes they're aware of this issue and sometimes they're not. I did not know about this until a local constituent who used to be an addict herself, but now she helps others, came to me and explained this, this emerging problem, and it's terrible. And so I really wanted to get some thoughts from you on what are we seeing in Bucks County relating to this particular issue? Are there any things that we should be doing in terms of legislation? And then finally, from a resource perspective, I know that I've seen in the news about us, having issues with staffing for our prison, that thinking about resources and, how do we help to get ahead of this? How do we give you guys the resources you need so you can do all of the things that you need to?
Yeah, those are great questions, and I'm turning some over to our sheriff as it relates to staffing, because he is directly impacted, as are the 39 police departments. For starters, if xylazine is being trafficked and intercepted, we had a case where they're working with federal authorities where it was intercepted in the U.S. Postal Service. Was someone was trafficking xylazine. It had to be burned and discarded, and no charges could be filed. So you can traffic because it's not a scheduled controlled substance. It was not deemed illegal to traffic. I mean, the absurdity of that no one could be held accountable. I mean, thankfully they cut it off, and individuals lives may have been saved, but there was no ability to arrest and prosecute. So the other issue from the human perspective is Narcan doesn't revive somebody who's overdosing on xylazine. Narcan is strictly used to revive somebody who's overdosing on opioids. And so if an individual has a combination of xylazine and heroin or fentanyl in their system, they will not survive if they're suffering a near-fatal overdose, meaning they will suffer that fatal overdose if there's no medical intervention, and Narcan does not fix that. I don't know where they're at scientifically. If I'm assuming they're attempting to come up with a solution, but that's a real problem. And I'll turn it over to the sheriff, but for us, I think, Sheriff Herron said it best, an individual's committing other crimes, but they have xylazine in their system. So I'm not worried about someone who's just in possession of narcotics going into the jail, but they're committing other crimes where they should be held for the community safety and risk of flight. They cannot be, because we're taking resources, men and women off the street to guard them for a week at the hospital. Same men and women who are not able to respond to calls. And so decisions are being made to reduce bail because the prison won't accept them, and the resources aren't there to staff holding them in the hospital, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it is a crumbling house of cards. where heroin and methamphetamine poses its own problems, xylazine poses a whole new set of problems because it starts to shut down all these organs. And the medical problems with the folks that are on xylazine are not like anything we've ever seen before. So you can't. You have to. It's 2 police officers, 2 corrections officers, 2 sheriffs for every 1 prisoner that you're guarded. Obviously, you can't have 1-to-1. It has to be a 2-to-1 ratio, and you're taking people off the street, and it's very costly. We just proposed the other day. We were on a Zoom, myself, the district attorney, the first assistant, with some county officials, and you know what? At the end of the day. And I'll say it because most of you know me know that I have no filter. That's why I wrote a script, because otherwise we'd still be listening to me talk. Everything comes down to the almighty dollar and the liability. And you know what? We're not in an exact science business. Like I told you about reviewing tapes. I watch tapes over and over again, and I still can't make a decision on what I actually saw. We're not in a money-making business here. It costs money to properly police your community. But people care about 2 things. Schools and safety. Roads paved and snow removal and nice parks, they're all beautiful things. But when you're looking for your house, you're not looking for how fast the township got the snow off the street. You're looking for school grades and you're looking for safety. That's what you're looking for. And right now we're failing in the first one. I can't speak to the schools. That's not my area of expertise. But as the district attorney had said, it's hard to incarcerate people because they're so sick. And we don't have a medical wing here in Bucks County Jail. Frankly, we need one because people need treatment, but they're coming in so ill. And you know what? It didn't take long now for the criminals. They're not stupid. Just because you're a criminal doesn't mean you're dumb. They are now figuring out to be ill and to have problems gets you out of jail because we can't incarcerate them because we can't watch them. So we're getting bails reduced. And that's a problem. So what could you do? You can't just keep throwing money at a problem because we're just putting buckets on the leaky faucet. We have to figure out some way to incarcerate folks that are sick. We have to figure out some way to pay for it. Right now, once they cross the threshold of the jail, it's on the Bucks County taxpayer. The county is self-insured. They pay cash for the hospitals. That's a pretty great deal for the hospitals. Before they cross the threshold, they're on welfare. It's a tax dollar, but it's a federal tax dollar or a state tax dollar. It's a different pot of money. But there's got to be some solution. I don't have the answer for it, but this problem is getting worse and worse. You can't let the criminals get a jump on you, and the fact that they're taking the drug and creating their own problem is a problem for us. But with saying that, we do need treatment. We do long-term treatment. Insurance companies can't throw people out after 10 days. No one's getting cured in 10 days. It's not possible. It's not possible to get cured in 10 days. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it needs some funding to get people into treatment, and it needs funding to get people into. You got to get them medically cleared because you can't have people dying in prison because then you have a whole new set of problems.
Thank you very much.
Representative Stats.
Thank you, Chairman Kale, and thank you, District Attorney Shorn and Sheriff Horan for being here. Thank you for your testimony. I know that just a few years ago, drug overdoses in Bucks County were declining pretty nicely. Then COVID came along, and that spiked. So where does that trend stand today? Does that trend continue? Is it flat? Is it declining?
It's still very much a problem, and I think it's only going to be compounded with this inability to revive people. But I am proud of the fact that we do our best to investigate the drug delivery that resulted in that fatal overdose in Bucks County. I know not every county does that. They don't have the resources. But to us, that's a lost life. That's a homicide. When it's someone who's struggling with addiction and they suffer a fatal overdose, it's still very much a problem. And it does impact every family. And I need to be clear, when Sheriff Herron and I are talking about incarcerating people who have drugs in their system, we're not talking about incarcerating people who are simply, struggling with addiction. We're talking about people who are committing and perpetrating crime as a result of their addiction. But it's still very much a problem. I don't know the exact stats, and I can get them, but it is a huge problem and a huge resource, allocation of resources to investigate those fatal overdose deaths.
And the fatal overdoses are down, but they're down because of Narcan, because Narcan is everywhere. So, and I don't have the stats, but the last time I looked at them, the overdoses itself were not down. The fatalities were down. And that's a good thing. That's a great thing. But you're just prolonging it. I mean, we're playing with the numbers. It's because everywhere you go, in this room here, a couple people have to have Narcan on them. So, because there's so much Narcan everywhere you turn, the fatalities are down. But the drug problem is worse than ever. And the marijuana today is not the marijuana of the 1970s. The marijuana is laced with fentanyl, it's laced with other drugs. And I know this is, or maybe it is the time for it, but please, Pennsylvania cannot legalize marijuana. I remember, talking to now Senator Fetterman about it. That was a waste, but we cannot legalize. Understood. Did I say that out loud? We cannot legalize marijuana.
And I agree with that statement, by the way. And
Which one?
If I may?
Yep.
Do we have any data that shows trends in new crimes so we can become more proactive, so we're not just reacting to crime that becomes a wider spread issue?
I don't have specific data, but I do know one of the biggest concerns right now are ghost guns, the personally manufactured firearms. We are seeing you can order all the components online, and I encourage all of you to YouTube it. And there's a kid who shows you, and he walks through the steps, a minor, as he purchases all the components and then assembles a firearm. And there's some significant gaps in legislation, because how could anybody have envisioned this when it was codified? Firearms, statutes were codified. Nobody could ever envision that you could personally manufacture your own firearm. And this is not the law-abiding, and I believe in the Second Amendment, and I respect the individuals that, are law-abiding. These are individuals, there's a reason why they want to get these guns into their possession, because they are not traced. There's no serial numbers. You can get them without any vetting. Every other, legitimate firearm transfer, there's vetting for a reason, to make sure you're not a person who's prohibited from possessing. And what's frightening is we just joined a great partnership with our Collier County, Montgomery County, for a NIBIN terminal, which allows us, we have a homicide or a shooting case in Ben Salem, and there's ballistics recovered there. We can put that in that NIBIN terminal, which used to take an analyst months to look at the lands and grooves and all the ballistic evidence, and it can instantaneously link it to other crimes occurring in Philadelphia, Montgomery County, all the surrounding areas. It's phenomenal. But when you have firearms that are not traceable, that have no way, no mechanism of, tracing them back by serial number, it's a real problem. So I will say that's a big concern.
And I think the crime bill package that is being put together by y'all and Senator Farry, I think it speaks for the crimes that we're faced with. People don't steal the Amazon packages from your porch because they want your new espresso set, and they found out you're getting a new espresso tea set, or your bow tie that you ordered, or some belt from Amazon. They're stealing it to get it, to sell it, to buy drugs. Right. They're not stealing catalytic converters because they need a catalytic converter for their car. They're stealing it to sell it, melt it, buy drugs. So, obviously the guns are self-explanatory, but most of these crimes that are in your crime bill really, talk to the issue. I mean, the rioting and the looting, that's a whole separate issue, but I think a crime bill is a good bill. But we also make sure, and I don't know if it's in there, but and I believe in mandatory minimums. I know there was a lot of debate about them years ago, but the amount of people we pick up on parole violations and the time it's wasting, we fly literally multiple times a week all over the United States because there's laws on the books that we can't do by video. We should have, if anything good came out of COVID, it was Zoom and all the other social sites, all these other sites to do meetings, at different locations. But we have to bring people back, and that costs the taxpayers. I mean, for every criminal we're bringing back who's going to go before a judge and be let go because there's no room in the jail, they're just going back out again. And I don't understand why we bring them back to Pennsylvania or to Bucks County. It's just so they can be cut loose to commit more crimes. So there's a lot of things that can be done to help with that situation. But right now, we have about 7,500 outstanding county warrants in Bucks County, people that are not picked up. And until I got into office, there was no one picking them up, and I had to fight tooth and nail with at least two of the county commissioners that did not want to give me the funding. Thank God I had Commissioner DiGirolamo in my corner, even though he's a minority commissioner. But we finally got the funding, and we have more deputies on the street now. Actually, that's all they do is go out and pick people up on warrants. Those people that are out on warrants aren't sitting at home watching, the Phillies. Maybe they were last night, but they're out committing crime, as the district attorney talked about. So we need to get them off the streets and incarcerated.
Thank you for that. If I could just end with a comment. I think we all know that criminals will commit crimes they think they can get away with. And when we have our neighboring district attorney, Larry Krasner, not prosecuting and making statements like this, by the way, and I quote, "We do not believe that arresting people and convicting them for illegal gun possession is a viable strategy to reduce shootings." That's from his office. So when we have that right next door to us, that's a problem for all of us. So thank you for your answers.
Representative Labs.
Thank you, and thank you both for your testimony. Something that you both touched on was the sentiment of growing up here and being from here, and in the district that I represent, Central and Upper Bucks County, I talk to a lot of my residents about that. I'm from here. This is not the county that I grew up in. This is changing, and I think in the back of your mind, you kind of have that thought of, well, this can't happen to me, or this won't happen in my area. But the fact is, it is. And it's moving north, and we know that. So what can residents do to help protect themselves, kind of take that into their own hands a little bit, but also to assist law enforcement? What can they do? And is it as, not as simple, but, just being aware and things like that? How can we, as residents, prevent this?
It's a great question. Awareness, obviously, as you mentioned, is a fantastic first step. But, the good thing is to continue to all of our police chiefs foster such great relationships with their respective the municipalities or the regions they are in charge of, and their community policing, and they foster those relationships. It has to go both ways. I mean, the city of Philadelphia started to fail because people were terrified to cooperate because they were fearful for their own safety, especially when they had no confidence that the outcome would guarantee their safety. So it's like a cycle. So we have to stay firm on what we do and hold people accountable to the fullest extent on violent crimes. I believe in rehabilitation for nonviolent offenders. We need to rely on our community to be willing to make that call and call in that tip, and trust if they need anonymity. We need to rely on them if we need to call them as a witness. And if the second people start refusing to come into court, our job fails. So you start from the beginning. You make sure you prosecute the catalytic converter thefts. You make sure you prosecute the retail thefts, and you hit it at the core. The community then trusts my police do their job, and my prosecutor does her job, and then you build on that. So we got to continue to have that relationship with our community.
I mean, it's not rocket science, and we're very lucky in Bucks County that we do have great citizens, and there is a good relationship with the police department. And the community policing, I know, is a fancy term, and it comes, it goes, but you do it every day. And especially in Bucks County now with ring cameras and all these other things, they partner with the police. So the footage that law enforcement is getting from residents, I mean, don't be afraid to partner with your local police. That everybody has cameras all over the place, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. For an older person like me, I wasn't used to it, but now I'm used to it. But the younger folks, everybody's used to being, no matter what you're doing, it's being videotaped somewhere. Somebody's got you on, so you smile, you're on candid camera. So that's not just a TV show anymore, it's reality. So the community partnering with your local police with whatever you can, and it's as simple as, I don't know who the person was that coined the phrase, see something, say something. If you think something's wrong, you're a smart person. Chances are something's wrong. And 911 is a free call, and you're not bothering law enforcement. They do not mind. They'd rather come out there and make sure that your neighbor didn't tell you that they're moving today and people moving stuff out of their house, that's probably something wrong. And call us, and they'd be more than happy to come out. but they also have to support you, and people can't get sucked into some of the craziness that's out there. And again, I go back, and I'm a strong believer that we should not be legalizing marijuana. It's a gateway drug. It's also one of the only drugs besides methamphetamine that law enforcement, and methamphetamine can only be smelled in its manufacturing state, but marijuana is the only state that we could smell without any testing. And that marijuana leads to other cases, and we had a case prior to my departure that somebody smoking a joint on the corner of Route 1 and Old Lincoln Highway led to a 4-state opioid distribution breakdown, because that one joint, that arrest, led to a little bit more, and if marijuana was legalized, if that was an eighth of a mile into Philadelphia, there would be a lot more opioids on the street today, because that case would never evolved. So please, with your colleagues, and I'm not worried about this group here, but you can't take away the tools that we have. A lot of times people try to take away the tools, and I know Director McVeigh, I'm not going to go into it, but he's going to talk about, the problems that they see in Philadelphia with the tools that are being taken away from those officers. You can't take away the tools. You can't tell me to build a house and don't give me a hammer and a saw. I can't build the house.
Thank you.
Representative Hogan.
I want to thank you both. A lot of my questions have been answered in your comments following these other questions. And yeah, and I especially want to highlight, too, the other costs of the xylazine issue. There's a lot of societal costs that come from these new drugs that seemingly come out of nowhere, whether it's on the law enforcement side or the taxpayer side with healthcare. But Jen, this question's more for you. We have a lot of bills and a lot of packages that have sentencing enhancements, mandatory minimums, things like that. As somebody in law enforcement, as somebody that's been on the legal side of this, that means nothing if those charges aren't filed. And can you elaborate for anybody watching or anybody in the audience now from a legal perspective, a prosecutorial side, what is actually happening in Philadelphia with the district attorney's office? Because again, we can have a murder, very clear murder 1, but if it's charged as murder 3, that person's probably getting out of jail at some point in their lifetime.
Probably getting out of jail, and murder 1, life is life in Pennsylvania. Murder 2, life is life. And there is a reason that those mandatories have survived constitutional muster. Those individuals are so dangerous to the community. Third-degree murder, you take a first-degree murder and you negotiate it down to a third-degree murder and let it be up to someone's discretion who doesn't believe in the punitive aspect. There is a rehabilitative aspect for many crimes, but there's a punitive aspect. And that person's back on the street. Again, it's that trickle down. Who is ever going to want to cooperate? Who is ever going to want to put their neck out there and there are wonderful people living in the city of Philadelphia, and they are impacted day in and day out by the failures there. To touch briefly on what you were talking about with xylazine and touch on mandatory minimums, for those that may not know, it does take some discretion out of a sentence with a judge. But we as prosecutors, if you have an individual caught distributing a large quantity of drugs and they're facing a mandatory minimum, we have the decision, we have the ability to invoke or not invoke that mandatory. We used to be able to. That sometimes is the cooperation you need to work up the chain to get the big distributor, to get the big violent gun possessing, organization running distributor. So there's a punitive aspect, but there's also a very practical aspect that allows some teeth. So to bring it back, Representative Hogan, to Philadelphia, if my sentence, I can do that time fairly easily. I'll be out in a couple of months. What's your incentive to help law enforcement get the real bad guys? You have none.
Thank you. And another question as well. Again, we're talking a lot of, addiction-related crimes and also violent crimes. And in Bucks County, we have gun store thefts. We have legislation that if you're robbing from a gun store, you're not going after the antique firearm to sell on eBay. You're going to commit more crimes with it. But we also have a quality of life issue. And Jen, you've been a great participant in this as well with fraud-related issues, particularly with an aging community in Bucks County. What are some tools that, and this is open to you as well, Sheriff, tools that you need or things that we can do as a legislative body. And it's not just legislation. I mean, there's a lot of other ways we can help out in our official capacity to go after these fraudsters, protect more people, and really educate the population.
It's a great question, and I won't be long. I'll turn it over to the sheriff. But Representative Hogan, Representative Marcel, I've had the privilege of partaking in your, scam jams and, sharing the just awareness to especially our older population. And one of the things I always lead with is there's no shame in being a victim. I, every day online, make a purchase, and 2 seconds later, my husband's like, okay, that deal that you thought you made for 2 for 1 on Facebook is not legitimate and has the ability to cancel the credit card transaction. It's reminding our seniors that there's no shame in that. Don't be embarrassed. Report the crimes. But what you all do in the community awareness is phenomenal. As a prosecutor, I love it because we're hoping to get to people before they're victimized. Just simple changes like use the tap feature on your credit card versus the magnetic strip. They're astounded by the fact that makes them safer. Or use a gel pen versus a traditional pen will not make your check will not be able to be washed. Like those things, and you've all hosted those events, and it's really fun to be a part of and see, the difference you're making. So I think that's key as well.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what you can do because a lot of these frauds come from outside the United States. So, but I think as the district attorney said, whatever we can do to get the message out, just keep pushing that out, the message, and educating people. I've been a victim of fraud. I got a call from a very high-ranking elected official the other day that their office was being, targeted by somebody posing to be from the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police. I called Scott Bond, who's sitting here, the executive director, and I said, "Are you guys doing this?" He said, "No, we don't do that." And when I was, I was a vice president there, and I don't think we ever did that. So I immediately called, and he reported to the people they need to report it to. You just got to educate. And I will just throw this out there since it's being never purchase with your ATM card. Do not use a credit card. Never use your ATM card in the stores. That is your cash. If they get it, they get to your bank account. The credit card is MasterCard and Visa's money. So never use your ATM card for a purchase because that gives them direct access to your bank. Don't ever do that.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Everybody's like thinking, oh, Christ.
Chairman Gillen.
Just 30 seconds. My colleagues from Bucks County have asked all the right questions, made the right statements, and sponsored and co-sponsored the right legislation. For the sheriff, I walked over to then Lieutenant Governor Fetterman's office when I heard that he was coming to my area with the pot tour. And I asked for the opportunity to speak. There was a hesitancy amongst his staff, and finally they relented. So when he came, I spoke and shared my perspective on recreational marijuana. May I observe that I received more booze than the Atlanta Braves did last night in South Philadelphia? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Rigby.
There it goes. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you both for your testimony, Sheriff, for your service. I find it kind of ironic. I drove 255 miles to come here to listen about Philadelphia coming across the borders, and we have a very transient population in Johnstown, and Philadelphia seems to be the topic of discussion most of the times there too. So we kind of feel right at home here. I do want to get back to with the sheriff and with the amount of deputies, the amount of police that we have, or I should say don't have, and I'll date myself. In '83, I graduated from the academy, and every quarter we put at least 30 out. So in a year's time, we were graduating 120 from the academy. I just went to this past year's graduation. We graduated 12. Which is an increase. The year before, we only graduated 4, so I don't know if it's a trend up or because we moved it to a different location. My question would be to both you in messaging, what can we do to get more people involved, to get them back into law enforcement? I spoke to our local captain. Last time they posted for Act 120, they had 0 applicants. So they just now reposted the non-Act 120. They had 11 applicants, 9 showed up, 4 passed. And I know, this department is sitting at least a dozen officers down right now. So when he tested in 2004, there were 168 applicants. So, I know the media has certainly put us in a dark place. And I don't know if it's starting to turn now. I think it is, honestly. I'm just wondering what you're seeing in this neck of the woods. Thank you.
For me, and I think the generation's starting to flip again. You see a lot of folks, that we try to recruit for this job. A lot of people, and I don't know why, they don't want to work holidays, weekends, nights. It's a great job. I mean, I wouldn't change my life for anything, the career path I took. But there's a lot of folks, that we try to recruit that just don't want to work the crazy shifts. And it's not, they're worried about, I think, their livelihood and, being arrested and going to jail, for making a simple mistake. I mean, the pay's not bad. It's great. It's pretty good. It's good benefits. I mean, and no 2 days are ever the same. If you're going to law enforcement, you're not going to be bored from one day to the next. So a lot of it is a generational issue. We get applicants, when I was going through applicants, that colleges tell them bounce around from jobs to find what you like. No one wants to see somebody bouncing around on a job. I don't know what professor is giving that advice, but that's bad advice, professor. That's not good advice. Pick what you want and stick with it. I know, I can't help myself. I picked on everybody today. But a lot of it is the perception. The media has really, made some issues with law enforcement. Do we have bad apples in the profession? Of course we do. And we deal with them. We terminate them. We get them out of there. That's never broadcasted. You'll never see that on the first 3 minutes of the news. But there are bad apples in every profession, and we deal with it. No one was as upset as some of the things we've seen around the country, the Derek Chauvin incidents of the world, than law enforcement. We're the ones that were probably more sicker than anybody else because we knew what the next days were about to bring. A profession that we've grown to love is going to be ripped apart because, somebody did something that they shouldn't have done. So we just have to deal with the perception, and I think a lot of it is generational. But we're starting to see that come back around, I think, slowly. I mean, that's, probably a good question for Director McVeigh when he gets up here, what they're starting to see. But also, for the small municipalities, they can't afford to send someone for training, so they want people already certified. The Act 120 training is not cheap if you put yourself through the academy. It's thousands of dollars. It's a full-time thing, so you can't work when you're doing it. It's very hard to have another job and go to the academy. I'm not saying reduce the training, but when I went to the academy in 1987, it was 12 weeks. I think it's 8 months now, something like that. It's like 8 months. So that's been a big increase. I don't know why so much has changed as far as the training, but it's a lot longer now to get people out of the academy. It's very costly, and only the big departments can really afford to send people. The state gives you some money back, but it's not all. I think it's about 67 cents on the dollar, something like that you get back from the state, which isn't bad, but a small borough can't afford that. But larger municipalities can, boroughs can, and we're a Commonwealth. We have 1,200 police departments, just under 1,200 police departments, and most of them, over 50% of them are less than 10 officers. Those 50% cannot afford to hire people and send them to the academy. It's just not affordable. So that's something you could look at, funding streams towards that. As I say, we fight every day for funding. For me, trying to get deputies, I can get deputies, but the funding is very hard to come by, and I fight every day for funding.
When I was chief, I had the same problem, and I took the majority of mine came out of the academy. I'm a small municipality, and they would stay with me anywhere from 8 to 12 months. And normally, once we got them their MPT number and got them trained, we were the second step of the academy for the most part. And they would go to the bigger departments where they could get full-time employment. And the pay in our area really wasn't great. When you're working in a small municipality, you're really within the extremes of no money to work with. And police always, for some reason, seems to be down even below the street department. So, I'll check back to see if that trend is starting to change. It seems to be that it may be, and I'm hoping it is.
Well, you're right. The small departments become training grounds. And what a lot of departments are doing now, chiefs are making people take their name off of other. Once you get hired, they're making you withdraw from any other application process.
The majority of mine worked other departments too. A lot of these guys are working 2 or 3 departments because they can't secure a full-time job because these departments can't afford the benefits. So I've got guys that are working, they're working 80 hours a week instead of 40, hoping to land a full-time job.
A wise man once told me you can make water go up a hill for the right amount of money. So, I hate to always come back because everybody comes back to you all for funding, but funding is a big issue. I know before I left, and I applaud Representative Tomlinson, and I'm not sure if Senator Farry, I don't know who else worked on that with her, but she was able to secure funding, and a lot of funding comes in, and it doesn't go to law enforcement. The county just got their opioid award settlement from the governor's office, or however that comes down. And law enforcement, you know how much they got out of that? $0. $0. And I was the only law enforcement agent. I submitted. A lot of people just don't bother putting in because they know they're not going to get the money. I submitted for a grant request and got $0. I was denied. How do you not give law enforcement money from an opioid settlement? I cannot figure it out. It used to keep, the first 10 years, it used to keep me up at night trying to figure out what decisions are being made above my pay grade. I stopped doing that. How does law enforcement not get $1 from that? I don't know how that's possible. They're on the front lines dealing with it before anybody else. And as the district attorney said, here in Bucks County, we started programs, Bucks County Police Assisting in Recovery. It was mirrored after a program in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And we help people get treatment before incarceration. We give them the option of treatment. If you need help, you can come to a police department. We will get you at 3 o'clock in the morning. We will get you seen by somebody, regardless of your financial situation. We don't care who you are. If you're asking for help, we're going to get you the help. We can only take it so far, but we have a great relationship with the Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission. What's DDAP? That's Ackerman and Harrisburg. So we have some great partnerships here, but you still need the cops on the street to do the job, and they need the funding to do that and keep the cops on the street. And you're right, a lot of these small departments, the police officers themselves have to buy their own bulletproof vests. That should not be in Pennsylvania or America. That should not be. If a police officer needs a bulletproof vest, the government should pay for it. It should be that simple. This is not rocket science. It should be that simple. It shouldn't be going for a new street light somewhere. It should be going to a bulletproof vest. I got to stop. I'm getting emotional. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry, Chairman, I didn't mean to rile him up. But
most of them are used to me.
I was going to go say that, one I did interview would have been a great candidate, but he bowled on Wednesday nights. He wasn't available for evenings, and he thought it was ridiculous. I wanted him to work on weekends. So that's what we're dealing with now. Yeah. Thank you.
Representative Marcel.
Thank you very much. I actually just wanted to follow up on a question from Representative Rigby. In your response, you said it should be that simple. And locally in my district, a lot of people have been asking me about the staffing crisis at the prison in our county. And, when you're saying it should be that simple, is there something simply that will help that situation? Because it's on people's minds locally. And so, Fred, if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing what's been happening at the county prison, and if there's anything that can be done. Obviously, we're looking at this from a state perspective, but hearing about you guys not being able to get what you need to do your jobs is very concerning to me.
This prison has critical staffing issues. You're talking about 500 plus inmates. They need to be guarded. We saw what just happened in Pennsylvania with somebody climbing a wall. That should not happen. And you saw what it cost after the fact. What's that bill? I'd like to see that number. And could we have avoided it by putting the money where it should have been to begin with? You don't build the foundation after the house. We just don't do that. There is critical staffing. The prison has had issues in the last couple of months where emails have gone out to the police chiefs and other folks that the prison is not taking prisoners. How is that possible? How does the prison not take prisoners? Because they're so short-staffed. What we saw during COVID is there was a nursing shortage, so they put money at it. And now nurses, and they deserve it. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. But you need to put money into it. The county needs to throw money into it. You can't shut a prison down. You cannot close Nockamixon Park or something and don't let the kayaks run that week if you have to, whatever it is. I know some people are probably mad about that statement, but and I just use that in general, but you cannot shut a prison down because of staffing issues and there's not enough funding to support a prison. That is a fundamental function, to hold people accountable. All the things we're doing and everything the district attorney talked about, mandatory minimums. If we don't have enough staffing, that can't be dealt with. So the prison is a huge issue. funding, the fact that every time he has numerous people that have to go for medical care, when we talked about Trank, that takes 2 guards out of the prison. That's less guards working on a cell block. So that is a huge issue. I'll bring this up because I have a little bit of an audience right now. I know Senator Tomlinson and Representative Tomlinson and Senator Farry have heard me talk about this, and I know most of you have had. One of the solutions, I think, is low-hanging fruit, and it's died in Harrisburg, is a hotel tax for public safety and law enforcement. When I book a vacation and I find out the cheapest hotel room and they tell me the hotel is $239 a night, I don't ask them what's the taxes locally. I get to the hotel and I check out and I'm like, wait a minute, this is $279 a night. What happened to $239 a night? I mean, I don't say this. I look at the bill and I got a million little taxes. I pay it. Disney gets their tax money. Wherever I am, San Diego gets their tax money. I'm okay with that because I had a beautiful stay at the hotel. And it's died in Harrisburg, and I don't think it's died because of you all. I think it's died because of other people. It's a freebie. It's low-hanging fruit. For every 1% in Bucks County of a hotel tax, back when I did the research, and I think it was who was Senator Thomason's chief of staff at the time? Oh my God, the name escapes me right now. Sean Schaefer, and Ryan Skachillis was an intern back then. All those folks were working, and for Bucks County, a 1% hotel tax would have brought in over $1 million+ for a 1%. That was just Ben Salem. Can you imagine if that's what Ben Salem's cut would have been. Can you imagine if we did that across the board? No one cares about a hotel tax. The people are staying in hotels, and guess what? It's not the constituents in Pennsylvania that are staying at our hotels. And some of the hotels, some of the really bad hotels, they're going to pay the bill anyway. And if you're at the Marriott in Philadelphia or whatever it might be, but Bucks County has no hotel tax that goes to local law enforcement. The hotel tax we have goes to the tourism, which is beautiful and nice, and I want to promote New Hope too, which is a great thing to do because I love New Hope and all the towns in Bucks County. But the ship is sinking, folks. The pipe is going to burst. This is low-hanging fruit to throw money, and it cost the taxpayers of Bucks County $0. We just, by that, and I only know Ben Salem because that's where I came from at that time, but over $1 million to Ben Salem at not one cost to the taxpayers. This is a home run. We need to get this through. And it's not you all. I know there's some of your colleagues are opposing it for one reason or another, but no one cares about a hotel tax. No one cares. Sorry, I took the opportunity and went there.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Can we get Scott? Are you okay with this? Can we get Pennsylvania Police radar finally? Some of you aren't smiling any longer. I'll leave.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Representative Hogan.
As a member of the Tourism Committee, I know how important tourism is to Bucks County, Sheriff. But
I didn't mean any disrespect.
No, your comments have been great. And there's one last topic, and I'd ask you to be brief with it. I know we're running out of time, but the Bucks County delegation, along with Senator Farry, is aware of a program that you've been trying to champion. And I think for our colleagues from out of Bucks County, it could be helpful if you could briefly kind of discuss some of the DNA efforts you've been doing and how with certain crimes that could actually aid law enforcement and save money. As you mentioned about the foundation, we could save money on the front end with some minor legislative fixes. Briefly.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that briefly, but I will. Pennsylvania is one of, I think, 19 or 18, it changes every day, but we're one of 19 or 18 states in the country that only take DNA from convicted felons. Convicted. The other 31 or 32 states take it at time of arrest. We need to do arrestee legislation on DNA. DNA is not a new science. It's been around now for a while. It's like a fingerprint. The Supreme Court has already talked about DNA and its admissibility and that it's nothing more than just a fingerprint but high tech. And I'm simplifying it. I'm not a lawyer. But Pennsylvania does not take DNA mandatory at time of arrest. You can decide what crimes it could be for. It could be for all felonies, and it could be for some misdemeanors. The district attorney and the current district attorney, the first assistant, we've had numerous discussions on this. But we've seen in Bucks County, we do take DNA voluntarily at time of arrest. It's legal. The Supreme Court says it's legal. We have seen over the years, prior to the last 2 years, COVID really changed a lot of things, and our numbers are still skewed from the COVID years. But prior to that, we saw substantial decreases in crime. A 42% decrease in burglary we saw in Bucks County when the rest of the nation was seeing a 4.5 to 6.5%. And that's only because we're asking people for their DNA and they give it up. That's another whole story. But I really think it's important for Pennsylvania to pass legislation. I know there's going to be some stuff hopefully introduced that we take DNA from people mandatory at time of arrest. You could do all felonies. I'd be fine with that to start. That's a stolen vehicle. So somebody steals a vehicle because DNA we leave behind. I probably did not leave my fingerprints on anything today here. I did not touch this water. I really didn't touch the microphone, but I have left a ton of DNA behind. Just sitting here, DNA is coming off of me. Just touching this cap like this, I am not leaving any fingerprints on this cap because of the way I'm doing it. But I just left thousands of DNA cells. Whoever wants this water bottle, let me know. I've left a lot of DNA cells. Just talking, I'm leaving DNA behind. So you leave DNA everywhere you go. You don't leave fingerprints everywhere you go. It would be a huge tool for law enforcement in Pennsylvania if we had arrestee legislation. It's not new. We're on the back end of the people doing it.
So just to be clear, though, we as a legislative body, we would be able to dictate which crimes it would have. So 100%. A first-time DUI wouldn't necessarily have it, but say a violent crime or a felony theft, and then once that DNA is in the database, if that individual, now known to law enforcement, commits a crime in Philadelphia, a shooting, leaves bullet casings, we would then have their DNA and be able to match up and know exactly who that individual was.
Well, we're doing it now in Bucks County, and Montgomery County, Chester County just came on board. So Pennsylvania is the #1 state right now in the country where municipalities have gone outside, I don't want to get too technical, CODIS, which you hear if you watch Law & Order TV shows, they talk about CODIS. That's the federal DNA database. So Pennsylvania, a lot of municipalities, a lot of counties are going outside of that to start their own database. But you're absolutely right. So if people commit crime, and what we're finding in Bucks County is people that are committing, those that commit the horrendous crimes in Philadelphia, like homicide and sexual assault, they come here and they're stealing from Walmart. The same person comes across the border and steals from Walmart. When we get their DNA, it's hitting the crimes in Philadelphia. The problem with Philadelphia is they're so short-staffed, they can't work a crime from 3 months ago because they had 3 shootings last night. So they just don't have the personnel power to do it. But the DNA, the science doing the work, what it will also do is cut down on some of the old-fashioned police work of hitting the doors, of that one-to-one confrontation with people where problems normally arise. The science is doing the work at 3 o'clock in the morning when somebody's home in bed sleeping. The science is doing the connection. I normally speak about 2 hours on that topic, but I know we'll hear more about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hogan. I have a brief comment and question. Representative Stats read a quote earlier today, and it got my blood pressure up a little bit. And there's a second part to that quote that he didn't mention, because Larry Krasner, the DA of Philadelphia, did say that. But what he also said, every single time that there is some terrible crime in Philadelphia that's a shooting, he also demands that the state legislature passes more gun laws. So on the one hand, he's saying that gun laws don't work, I'm not going to prosecute them. And then when people start pointing the finger at him and what's happening in Philadelphia, he turns around and says, well, actually, the legislature should pass more gun laws. And we talked a lot today about different people had mentioned how we think the tide is turning, and people are changing their tune on certain things as it relates to law enforcement. I think it's very important to remember where this problem came from. In large part, it came from the Democrat Party. And a lot of people within the party have been changing their tune, but it's like an arsonist now becoming a firefighter. It does not make sense. The problems that were caused across the board in this Commonwealth and beyond were problems caused coming from the left on law enforcement issues. And now it's good to hear that they're changing their tune, but they're only changing their tune because they're suffering the consequences of this ideology. So to me, it's just not, it's not real. It's not serious. It's just realizing, oh my goodness, you know, we're creating this disaster and we got to change or we're all going to get voted out. I don't find it very sincere, to be frank. But one of the things that we talked about a lot today already as well is that all these different drugs that are coming into society, and it seems like there's new names I hear every day. And as a father with young children, I could only imagine what my kids are going to be up against once they get to an age where, you know, that type of exposure is a little more. Just a question, and curious to hear your answers. Where are these drugs being manufactured? Where are they coming from? You guys are the boots on the ground. You're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. But where are they coming from, and is there something that can be done regarding stopping it at its core?
There's no question that, you know, we have identified, you know, cartels, that drugs are coming in from Mexican cartels and coming from the West, moving out and making its way to the eastern seaboard. There's no question. Xylozine's kind of unique in that it's in every veterinary business. It's a legitimate sedative. So it's just the criminals finding easy ways to access and then transport that. That's why I mentioned the case in the U.S. Postal Service. It was shipping xylazine, clearly not to sedate animals. But, you know, perhaps the sheriff can speak more, and I know chiefs will be able to speak more to the origins, but we're seeing them, you know, from obviously certain, you know, hot spots in the country, but we absolutely, and our law enforcement works wonderfully with state and federal to help work up the chain. But it kind of goes back to that whole original thing. If we don't have the teeth to kind of get to the street level dealers to work up that chain, to identify where they're coming from, we'll never know where they're coming from. So it kind of is just a cyclical argument. We need the teeth, we need the punitive aspect, we need the leverage so that we can identify those large scale dealers.
I mean, the district attorney, I mean, she covered it all. I mean, a lot of it's coming in from our southern borders. You know, she said that methamphetamine used to be, I mean, still a problem. It's a big problem again, but back in the day, it was a problem because it was being manufactured here in Pennsylvania. A lot of it was being manufactured in Poconos because Poconos was a wide open area. Methamphetamine gives a smell, and it's easy to get to New York City from the Poconos. So that's why it's manufactured in Pennsylvania back in the day. Most of these other drugs, with xylazine, like ketamine, we saw a problem. Ketamine is an animal tranquilizer too. We saw that problem 15, 20 years ago. And now you don't really hear about that anymore. Now it's xylazine. That's here for legal purposes, but you being utilized illegally. So a lot of it is going to have to be, I don't know if it was Representative DiGirolamo when he was in the House, you know, they talked about getting people, or that's coming up now, but people that are on these drugs and are overdosing over and over and over again, some sort of mandatory, you know, treatment, if that's even possible, getting somebody into some mandatory treatment. But you have to stop the want. You know, Wawa's always going to sell coffee if people want coffee in the morning. When people don't want coffee in the morning, Wawa's going to stop selling coffee. So we've got to stop the want, and it does come back. Treatment and education. We talked about you know, the frauds. That's all education, all education, all education. But we've got it. It's multiple prongs, and the bicycle doesn't turn on one prong, on one spoke. They all have to be tight, and if they all aren't working, the wheel collapses. So you have to work it all together. But most of it's coming in from our southern borders.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you to this panel. I thought it was very informative. Appreciate you all spending the time and answering the questions. We have our next panel coming up. It's the public safety perspectives from law enforcement. We will take a moment now to redo the table. And if you all could start making your way up. We have William McVeigh, who's the Director of Public Safety at Bensalem Police. Steve Lecomte, Chief of Police, Northampton Township. Right. I'm not great with names, I'm sorry. Dominic Verlacolo, the Chief of Police of Upper Southampton, and Rudolph Mueller, Jr., the Regional Director of Supply Chain Security for Bimbo Bakeries. Bimbo, I'm sorry. Bimbo. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Mr. McVeigh, if you'd like to begin.
Sure. I had the easiest name.
You did.
Thank you, obviously, for having us here today. I'm William McVeigh. I'm the Director of Public Safety for Bensalem Township. As the sheriff spoke, I took this position after he was elected, so I've been in it since January of 2022. But I've been a police officer for 25 years, and all of my time has been committed to Bensalem Township. In addition to my role as the director, I'm also the vice president of the Pennsylvania Southeast Chiefs Organization. I'm an executive board member for the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Organization, as well as the Bucks County Chiefs Organization. Today, my testimony will be somewhat similar to what you just heard from our next district attorney, who prosecuted my first homicide case successfully over 20 years ago. And it'll mirror a lot of what they said, but from the perspective of being the chief of police in Bensalem. So Bensalem Township's 21 square miles. We border the city of Philadelphia, and obviously we are the gateway to crime in Bucks County. So for us in Bensalem Township, we pride ourselves on having a very strong and effective police force. I will contradict everything Larry Krasner says in some of my testimony, which I'm sure you will agree with, but his practices and the failed policies of Philadelphia elected officials directly impact my township and all Bucks County, as you're going to hear today. In Bensalem Township, some of our numbers, we handle approximately 60,000 calls for service. There's 911 calls per year that we have to go to. But what we do that's different than a lot of municipalities, we push proactive policing. So we want our police cars very visible at the border, so people know when they leave the city of Philadelphia, they're entering somewhere that cares, and they're going to stop you if you're in violation of the law. We stop about 10 to 15,000 cars per year. That's not to say we write tickets on every car stop. We actually don't do that much. It's more an effective tool to deter crime, and more importantly, detect it and stop them before they get to hurt someone or victimize someone. In addition to the vehicle stops, we make over 3,000 criminal arrests each year that are usually successfully prosecuted under Matt Weintraub's leadership at the Bucks County District Attorney's Office. In 2022, we had over 3,000 reported crimes in our township. Of the crimes committed in 2022, over 2,000 were Part 1 crimes, which you have heard previously. These involve homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, theft, auto theft, and arson. These are the crimes that the police chief tracks, because this is what matters to the community. This is how we measure whether we're effective or not. Our Part 1 crimes, unfortunately, rose 24% from 2021 to 2022. That's a significant rise, but it's not a new rise. For the past 5 years, we've incrementally climbed up in our Part 1 crimes committed in Bensalem Township. That's not something we brag about. Our clearance rate for these crimes is very good. It's 32%. We're very proud of that. That's higher than most municipalities. We're very proud of it, but that's not the answer, because people are still victimized every single day. What we have to do is focus on the lawlessness, keep firearms out of the hands of felons, and ensure that criminals who commit property crime are put in jail as well and held accountable. In regards to the lawlessness, we've seen this play out at a level I've never seen in my 25 years. We just saw it in the news last week when a Philadelphia judge dismissed charges against a police officer. It led to instant looting and disorder in the city of Philadelphia. In Bensalem, we had to take measures to ensure it didn't creep up to our municipality like it did previously. But on a regular basis, we see this with the large car meets that come in our township now. We see this with the ATV riders that ride all over the streets, destroy property. There's no longer any sense of consequence from criminals, and we in law enforcement have to deal with this every single day to keep our residents safe and to maintain our quality of life in our townships. This picture gets even clearer and a little scarier when you look at the number of people who flee and elude from our police officers in Bensalem Township. To date, we've had 64 drivers who, rather than pull over when the lights go on, decided to flee, and by doing so, put every innocent motorist at risk. This is an increase of over 3,000% from 5 years ago. Only 2 people to this date in 2019 fled from us when we tried to stop them. Last year, it's an 88% increase when 34 people did it. So by just looking at that, it exemplifies this sense of lawlessness among the people that drive through our townships and come to our townships. In terms of illegal firearms, we've experienced a 75% increase in recovered guns in the past 2 years. We've seized 174 illegal firearms in that period. Most distressing, though, is the fact that this year, to date, we've arrested 21 convicted felons in our township for carrying an illegal gun. These are people who should never possess a gun because they're prohibited from possessing a gun because of their criminal convictions. When an officer removes a gun from a felon, I believe they're saving a life in the future or preventing a tragedy. The problem is, without strong penalties, these felons are often released and go back to carrying the guns and using their guns illegally to victimize more people. Many of these people and these felons are stopped on a simple car stop in our township. They would be precluded from being stopped in Philadelphia because of the driver equity law. Their cops can't use the tool of a car stop to get these guns off the street. Many of these people are also out on bail from the city of Philadelphia as well. In one particular case, we had a felon who was out. He was a convicted felon for a homicide case, and he was also wanted for armed robbery in the city of Philadelphia, but he was driving on Street Road in Bensound Township with an illegal firearm. So I'm proud of our officers for doing that kind of work and taking these guns off the street. When a felon is arrested, he absolutely needs to be certain that his consequence will be prison. With regards to property crimes, like most of the chiefs will testify, this is the #1 crime that's committed in our municipalities. These include burglary, theft from auto, and retail theft. In 2022, we've experienced significant rises, 32% in theft from autos, the majority being catalytic converters, 100% increase in burglary, and 25% increase in retail theft. In conclusion of my testimony, I've recently published 2 articles, The Philadelphia Effect on Suburban Towns, and the second was The Dangers of the Driver Equity Laws. In both of these pieces, I outline the negative consequences that my municipality is dealing with due to the ineffective and dangerous policies of the city of Philadelphia. Some of the main factors, the driver equity law, which I already stated, strips the officer from stopping vehicles in their jurisdiction. One case in particular in Bensound, we had a vicious murder where a victim was stabbed over 50 times. It was caught on camera. A Philadelphia police officer stopped that car for a minor violation and caught the suspect and got critical evidence. The law of driver equity ordinance was passed a month later, so that officer would not have been able to stop that car. And if he did, the case may have been suppressed in court. So that is the danger of that type of law. The other factor is the decriminalization of crimes like retail theft by Mr. Krasner, and also the catch and release bail system that goes on in Philadelphia right now. Without a system of justice that holds these criminals accountable and places more focus on victims of crime, which everyone forgets about, we will continue to be plagued by what we're seeing play out on the streets of Philly and Bucks County. And that concludes my testimony.
Mr. LeComte. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. I'm sorry. You hear me now? Yeah. Okay. No? No. You hear me now? Okay. All right. I'll get a little bit closer. Good morning. Thanks for having us today. My name's Steve LeComte. I'm the Chief of Police in Northampton Township. Northampton Township's primarily a residential community, beautiful area. As you know, we're in close proximity to Philadelphia. It's about 26 square miles and 40,000 residents. I'm going to concentrate today on mail thefts and fraud and how the two are related and how they're impacting primarily Northampton Township residents. Historically, and the reason why I'm just covering these 2 items today, historically, our Part 1 and Part 2 crimes in Northampton Township have been going down for many years, but some crimes have recently, over the last 2.5 years, increased, and specifically, that is mail thefts and frauds, and they're interconnected. In the last 2.5 years, we've had a 26% increase in Part 1 crimes. During the same time period, we've seen over a 600% increase in mail thefts. This increase is the primary reason for our increase in frauds. Unfortunately, we know that the actual increase in mail thefts is much higher because this crime is often unreported. These numbers are startling, but cannot accurately depict the level of victimization and inconvenience that these crimes have had on our Northampton residents. In 2021, we investigated 8 mail thefts and 3 frauds related to the mail thefts. There were 16 victims, and the total losses for these crimes were $29,633. So there's a huge financial impact. When we moved to 2022, we investigated 50 mail thefts and 46 frauds from the thefts. We had 102 victims, and the total losses were $455,697. So far this year, this is year to date, we've investigated 45 mail thefts and 12 frauds from mail thefts. We had 64 victims. At the current rate of mail thefts this year, we anticipate being at about 57 by year end, which is another increase. Total losses year to date, $130,639. A typical mail theft involves multiple victims because thieves steal mail from many mailboxes, and sometimes even U.S. mailboxes, before they leave the area. Thieves are commonly looking for checks that they can wash, copy, or alter. Believe it or not, you can even go on YouTube and find a video on how to wash a check. Unwanted stolen mail often ends up in the side of the roadway, in a trash can, or a storm sewer. So often that when we get these, officers very diligent, they fully investigate, and we end up looking on the side of the road to recover mail as well as in sewers, because it's so common. These thefts are often handled as one incident and generate one UCR number. As you know, UCR is Uniform Crime Reports numbers that police departments use to track crime. And that's why it's a bigger problem than actually our UCR reports even reflect, because one incident can have multiple mailboxes, multiple victims, multiple package thefts on the same street, but it's one UCR number. The problem is so serious, and this is concerning, we actually told our residents to take their mail into the mailbox to prevent theft. And we actually double-checked with the postal inspector before we go. We made a public statement like this on social media, and they agreed that that is the best course of action. We even told our community to avoid using U.S. mailboxes because the same problem is occurring. The thieves are going in U.S. mailboxes, whether they're fishing mail out or they're breaking into mailboxes. Just 2 weeks ago, 2 of the new security mailboxes that were just installed in Newtown Township near the McLaughlin facility were both forcibly entered. They used a pry bar on both of them and stole all the contents of the mail out of both mailboxes. The integrity of the U.S. mail service is definitely at risk here. It's becoming a very common crime. Some of the victim impact. You talk to the victims, not only are they upset because they lost their mail, but some of them wind up paying late fees for unpaid bills. They're forced to close their bank accounts, change banks. They're unable to use their local mailbox or even their own mailbox because we're recommending that they don't. There's financial losses for them. There's financial losses for the bank. There's identity theft concerns as well. We have made arrests. In 2022, we arrested a female from Philadelphia for a package theft from a porch, someone's front porch. She pled guilty. We made a second arrest for a check fraud after a subject from Philadelphia was paid $500 and drugs by an organized group of suspects in Philadelphia that get people to go in the banks to try to cash these stolen checks. He went in and tried to cash these altered checks, and he was subsequently arrested, and he also pled guilty. Moving to 2023, we arrested 2 subjects. One subject was from New York. Another subject was from North Carolina. They were observed stealing mail from mailboxes. Subjects were arrested after a brief pursuit. 37 checks were found. They obviously do this all the time because the headliner was actually cut, and that's where they store all the stolen mail, up in the headliner, so it's not seen inside the vehicle. So 37 stolen checks, that's just checks. And the reason why they just keep the checks is because the rest of the mail is no good to them. They just throw it out the window, they throw it in the sewer, they throw it alongside the roadway. So 37 checks were found in the headliner, and this case is still scheduled for trial. Mail theft is an organized criminal act, and grading of the offense should reflect the seriousness of the act and the impact it has on our businesses and our residents. Mail carriers from all over the United States have been robbed of their arrow keys. That's the special key that you actually use to get into a U.S. mailbox. They're being stolen because they're being used to get into U.S. mailboxes. It's important that local police investigate the thefts and fraud and charge the suspects, because I've spoke to 2 postal inspectors. They don't have the staffing to investigate all of them. They do not come out when we contact them in reference to a mail theft. They will work in conjunction with us, our investigation, on some cases, but generally speaking, their minimum for them to get involved in the investigation is $100,000 for a single incident. So they're not getting involved in a whole lot of cases unless we ask them to join us on one of our investigations. Also, the U.S. attorney has to approve their investigation before they can also get involved, because it has to be approved by the U.S. attorney for prosecution. Strong legislation that addresses this growing problem will increase public awareness while helping to deter criminal acts. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate you all bringing attention to this problem. Thank you.
Mr. Barrichello. Thank you. And in the interest of time, I'll speed up my testimony. I have 30 years in law enforcement, born and raised in Bucks County, Bensalem. I am the chief of Upper Southampton Police Department. We are a small township, 7 square miles, 15,000 residents. We are small town USA. I can go into all the specifics that my colleagues have talked about with regards to the different crimes, but I chose to focus on an issue that I see as a particular dangerous one. And just quickly, Upper Southampton is a small, tight-knit community. We do not see the volume of crime that takes place in larger municipalities. However, what I have noticed is a trend of some individuals who should be in prison because of lengthy criminal histories. They reside in the city of Philadelphia, and they come to Upper Southampton and other townships in Bucks County for the sole purpose of preying on individuals living in Upper Southampton. I went into a list of several individuals. I guess you guys have the testimony, but I'd like to focus on 2 particular individuals. Back in 2021, we had a burglary. This individual who committed this burglary had committed 10 prior burglaries to our burglary. 10. He is a career criminal. He went on to commit another burglary after our burglary in Bensalem. So this is a person who resides in Philadelphia, has committed burglaries all over the place, should be in prison, and is not. And the second person that I'd like to focus on, and also one of his crimes was a burglary with a firearm. This would be the final subject in my testimony. This person was stopped by one of our officers for heavy tint. Again, a violation that is not allowed to be stopped for in the city of Philadelphia. However, in Upper Southampton, we will stop people for that, and we will enforce the laws that are available and use the tools that are available to us. The officer did a fantastic job of gaining consent for the vehicle and recovered a Glock with the sear that was manipulated on it, which made it a fully automatic Glock with a 30-round magazine in it. This individual was charged with, in the city of Philadelphia, with murder for 3 times and was let go all 3 times because of Rule 1100. So there's a real issue with that. So this is an individual who was operating a vehicle in Bucks County, Upper Southampton specifically, with a fully automatic who has committed murder in the past. So as a career law enforcement officer, it is sickening to read the criminal histories of these individuals and to know that law enforcement, time and time again, arrest these people. We have cops that are out there doing the right thing for the right reasons. They're arresting these people, and they're getting before judges that are releasing them back into the community. All they do is wreak havoc on our communities like Upper Southampton. The system is broken, and something has to change. And one other area that I'll end with is the issue of purchasing firearms illegally, so straw purchases or individuals who are not available or should not be possessing handguns. Jen Shuren touched on this. The individuals, they try to purchase handguns. They are not allowed to purchase them. So we have seen in the last 2 years 60 individuals try to purchase firearms from a local firearm business that are not allowed to possess firearms. This creates an issue for us to have to put time and effort into investigating these individuals. They know they're not supposed to have them, but it's my opinion that they come to Upper Southampton because they think small town, no police, we're not going to do anything about it. And, ultimately, the system does work here. We do catch them, but it puts a huge burden on small organizations like myself that have to investigate these types of issues. So with that, I'll conclude my testimony. Thank you.
Mr. Moeller.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Representative Tomlinson and Director Bill McVeigh for allowing me here today to speak, more so on a corporate level. A little bit about myself. My name is Rudy Muller. I am a corporate security professional. I specialize in supply chain security, general investigations, and security management. I am a licensed private detective in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as well as the state of New Jersey. I currently direct the Loss Prevention and Supply Chain Security Program for Bimbo Bakeries USA. Since 2005, I have consulted, conducted, and or managed over 1,500 projects or investigations in over 35 states. Since 2022, I've been directly involved with assisting sales teams and operational teams with property, security, and threat assessments, and acting as a liaison to law enforcement agencies involving the catalytic converter thefts on a regional and national level. I'm the past director of security and for Nazareth Academy High School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm a 24-year law enforcement veteran, having honorably served as a county detective for the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, so I feel all of your pain. I retired in 2017. I was a state drug task force officer for the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office, Bureau of Narcotics Investigation, and police officer for the city of Philadelphia. For a short time, I did work in the borough of Ivyland here in Bucks County, so I'm familiar with the county, and did live in Northampton Township. And I do miss it. I also worked as a police officer for the Philadelphia Housing Authority. I am a member of the Pennsylvania County Detectives Association, the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and the Southeast Police Chiefs Association of Pennsylvania. So Bimbo Bakeries USA. It's the largest commercial baking company in the United States. We deliver bread, bagels, buns, English muffins, sweet baked goods to almost every town and community in the United States. Our corporate headquarters are located in Horsham, Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. We operate in 34 countries. 80% of houses in the United States have BBU products in them. Some of our brands, just to name a few that you might be familiar with: Arnold, Ballpark, Entenmann's, Lender's, Little Bites, Mayer's, Thomas's, Sara Lee, and Stroman Bread. We have 59 bakeries in over 11,000 routes and over 700 sales centers throughout the United States. We donate over 20 million pounds of food to Feeding America agencies across the U.S., and that does not include other organizations, churches, food banks, and food pantries. Bimbo Bakeries USA was deemed an essential business during the COVID pandemic. And just a little note on that, we had a plant up in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. That plant was closed. When the pandemic hit, we mobilized and got that bakery up and running to get bread out to the people. We operate in the Commonwealth. 25 counties we operate in out of 67 counties. We have 8 plants in the Commonwealth, 4 distribution centers in the Commonwealth, and 23 sales centers in the Commonwealth. One of them is located in Director McVeigh's township in Bensalem. Catalytic converter thefts since January 1st of 2021 to date: 1,385 thefts nationwide, with a loss of $4,700,000. In Pennsylvania and the Commonwealth, we've had over 170 thefts for a total of over $400,000. The average cost per theft in Pennsylvania was $2,438.36. But that is just the cost for the part of the catalytic converter. Fleet supervisors and mechanics, overtime, manpower issues. Some parts are mechanically repaired by outside vendors, which leaves us to private garages, which add additional costs. The original equipment manufacturer parts must be used during repair. Aftermarket converters do not meet the emission requirements. The original equipment manufacturer parts are usually back-ordered and not readily available to us. The cost of parts does not reflect the preventative maintenance issues. And to just touch on that, we could be looking to conduct an emissions or an inspection on 5 trucks that are waiting and maybe some oil changes, routine maintenance, preventative maintenance. Because of a theft that might have happened last night, all that's going to be pushed to focus on the 20 or 30 trucks where the catalytic converters were stolen from overnight. So now that preventative maintenance gets pushed, that inspection gets pushed. That turns around and can cause safety issues, damage to the equipment. Cost of labor, overtime, additional manpower, routes not being serviced, and loss of product. Customers not getting the product becomes perishable because it's dated product. That could lead to losses involving manufacturing. There's cost of rental vehicles that we might have to scramble for to bring into the fleet because of these vehicles being down. There's also more additional costs. Security and threat assessments. Having the properties assessed to enhance security measures. Enhanced security efforts. Additional fencing or signage. Collateral damage to the property. If there was fencing, lighting, cameras damaged during the theft, that requires repair. Security guard services, mobile camera services, paying for those services. Just to give you an idea, for 365 days to have a security guard at our Ben Salem Sales Center, that was over $120,000 in 1 year. Enhancing IT platforms. This is something that really shook me when we got involved in this, where do the IT platforms at the facilities, can they handle more cameras with the computer systems that are there? So now we have to enhance that. There's more money involved in that. Having IT stop working on their daily activities. They have to conduct emergency services, adding additional IT systems and purchasing other software. Catalytic converter theft disruption. The supply chain disruption, deliveries to sales centers, supermarkets, grocery stores, operations and manufacturing, baking additional products that were lost to make up for lost product. Fleet mechanics, diverting manpower from one facility to another. Law enforcement, disruption for our law enforcement, where they have to mobilize, where we have to call them, and they have to mobilize on a local, state, or federal level to investigate and apprehend these suspects and investigate the organized theft rings. And last but not least, our customers and families, who are also constituents for you folks. At the end of the day, they're not able to purchase the products, or they might have to pay higher costs for the product due to the additional costs that the company has to endure. So that is the end of my testimony, and I thank you for having me here.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, I just want to take a second to put some of the testimony in perspective. That murder that Director McVeigh mentioned happened literally less than a mile from my home. It's mind-blowing to think about that. You know, I grew up in Ben Salem. It was always a safe and great community. And what is happening recently is not just sad to me because it's my hometown, but mind-blowing and completely unacceptable. You know, it's one thing for us to go up to Harrisburg and stress the severity of the crime that's happening in our community, but it's another to sit here today and hear this raw and real testimony and statistics about what our law enforcement and our constituents are dealing with on a daily basis. So to Director McVeigh, thank you. To the entire panel, thank you so much for giving us your time and your thoughts, because it needs to be said, the public needs to hear how dire the situation is, and, you know, in turn, how important it is for us to get to Harrisburg and pass these bills and this legislation so that you guys have the tools we need, our constituents are safe. So again, thank you all so much, and I'll turn it back over to Chairman Kale.
Thank you. Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you so much for all of you being here. Thank you for your service to our community as well. I wanted to actually thank Northampton Township for hosting this event today, because if, you know, for anyone in terms of my colleagues that are from out of town, if you drive around our community, you actually will see yard signs that are in support of our local police. And Chief LeCompte, you know, you sharing some of the details of what's been happening here, it's very helpful. But when you take all of the testimony from all of you and hearing Director McVeigh talk about this sense of lawlessness, I think that has been so concerning for people in our communities, and they're talking about it. When we're at events, when we're out in the community, we're hearing from our constituents that they are worried that the lawlessness is moving closer and closer to them, or it's already here. And so I'm glad that we're doing these packages of different types of bills, and I'm pleased that the Porch Pirates bill that Representative Tomlinson and I have been working on with Senator Ferry went through the Senate. Thankfully, it's now in the House, the Pennsylvania House, and I hope we can act. But I also have concerns, two concerns. One is that, unfortunately, because of how close our body is right now, only one vote, that the Democrats have the majority, that a lot of legislation has not been moving forward. And so Governor Shapiro has signed a very small amount of bills compared to normal. I think he has signed the least amount of bills of a governor for the last 50 years, right at this point. And so we have good bills, and we're more than happy to introduce more bills to try to fix this problem. But we also seem to have a delay in acting within our body. We have a sense of a lack of enforcement in Philadelphia, and here we are in Bucks County trying to figure out, you know, what we can do to protect our constituents. And I think that the situation is dire, as Representative Tomlinson said. And so I'm looking to you to share if there are some, you know, kind of resources or things that we can do to help you, given that it's hard sometimes to get action, and it can be frustrating from our perspective. Yesterday, I was speaking to Warwick Township Police Department about license plate readers and trying to see if there are some grants or funding we can find from a technology standpoint. Obviously, we have a lot to work on to help make sure that you guys can do your jobs every day, but you know, is there more technology? Are there certain resources that we could help you while we try to figure out the legislative and, you know, kind of the more complex part of this on our side? But how do we help you? If you wouldn't mind maybe sharing some ideas, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Want me to start? Great question. Thank you. And I'll thank our representative, Casey Tomlinson, because as the sheriff had alluded to, she started a program with us with funding. And I'm very proud to say it's been over 2 years now where we have over 67 intersection cameras in our town. We have over, I think, 14 fixed license plate readers, and we now have a license plate reader in every single police car. And these technologies are helping our cops to be proactive, to get stolen cars, to get wanted subjects on the street before they can commit a crime, but also the technology is helping us solve crimes so we can, make a victim whole and prosecute the case. So, and you had asked the previous question of the first panel about support, and I think it goes hand in hand. I work for Mayor Joe DiDrama, who his goal was public safety. His council's goal was that, so they let us do our job. And they go out publicly and say that the police are very important to the residents. So when you have Philadelphia or other cities that come out against the police, you're elected to represent people. And when you're out there saying you don't trust the police, what's the community going to think? So I think the big, you mentioned lawn signs, is the support from the residents, but from all of the elected officials showing support. And if you can get funding, that was previously testified to, it's critical. And it is helping us make a big difference in this county by implementing the programs through the money that you very generously got for us. We appreciate that, and we put it to work every day.
I agree. License plate readers do work. In fact, next year, Northampton made quite a big investment for license plate readers for every one of our patrol cars. Right now, we have limited equipment in our cars. We do have some, but next year we'll have all of our cars equipped. In addition, the county, I know, has put up some stationary LPRs. They definitely work as well. I think the problems in Northampton can be addressed through community policing and also crime prevention programs, for sure, to educate our residents, especially our older residents, of the type of crimes that are occurring and how they're being targeted for victimization, because they actually are being targeted quite a bit more than our other residents. Your support is very helpful. Anything you can do as far as a bill to increase the penalties of some of these crimes that are commonly occurring in our jurisdictions is also helpful. And any grants that could be available for additional staffing of police and for any type of prevention programs would also be helpful. Thank you.
I'll echo what my colleague said, of course. I think the most important thing is for you guys to be out there supporting all law enforcement all the time. Instead of taking sides on things, let's look at what's most important, which is the safety of our communities, period. So I think with those types of things, the funding and that stuff is great. We need that, especially small agencies like mine. But I think communication is the biggest thing, and so if there's something that's going on, crime-wise, or even things that are good, for you guys to put that out there, I think will give immediate results. And ultimately, I forget who it was, if it was the sheriff that touched on it. Again, the communication back and forth, it goes both ways. If you live in an area, you know what is right and what's not right. If you see something that doesn't fit, call. Please call. It's very important because we can't be everywhere all the time. And again, with the information sharing, with everybody who has cameras, the Ring cameras, the Blink cameras, all that type of information is stuff we can use in investigations. So you guys can help us, the public can help us, and we can all help ourselves to make our community safer.
As a victim of the catalytic converter thefts, I can say firsthand the license plate readers helped with the investigation. As a victim of the catalytic converter thefts, I can say firsthand that the license plate readers in Ben Salem were used in the investigation and helped with that investigation. So we're even looking at it on a corporate level or private level to maybe use them at some facilities, basically policing yourself because of the lack of manpower that's out there. And, and that's more so in the city and county of Philadelphia than out in the suburbs. But, at the end of the day, the license plate readers, good tool.
Thank you very much.
Chairman Gillen.
There we go. I want to once again thank my colleagues, especially those from Bucks County, who've taken extraordinary leadership on these law enforcement issues. On August the 6th of 2022, in my own legislative district, a corporate security guard was shot and killed right off the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And the state police indicated at the time that they believed that the suspect was stealing catalytic converters. So these crimes spawned other serious crimes. And if I could just editorialize for a moment, society's role is important here also. This is fine legislation. It's important. It's timely. But parental involvement also needs amplification. From the perch that I had as a correctional officer and as an individual who spent time on the street, we've got to do a better job in our homes. We've got to do a better job in society in terms of training our young people. I feel very fortunate and privileged that I have a daughter who's a junior in college who has chosen criminal justice. She's also involved in an ROTC program. And those are the kind of things that we need to be encouraging as individuals, as parents, as dads, as a society to step forward, even in this difficult environment. And I admire the work that's gone on and will continue to go on. And I hope that others step up to fill the ranks. We're finding it's very difficult to recruit in law enforcement. So I would like to add one to the ranks as a family. And as a little tongue-in-cheek, I would suggest to Mr. McVeigh that you be very careful in the seat that you're sitting. There's a lot of DNA that the sheriff left there, and that area is going to need to be cleaned up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Stats.
Thanks again, Chairman. And I'm confident in stating that you can certainly count on the support of everybody that sits up here today. That's for sure. I'm looking at a report from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, and it shows a 10-year trend in both Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. And clearly throughout the Commonwealth, it's trending down. Crime is trending down throughout the state, but here we are outside of Philadelphia talking about the increase in crime. So I just think, once again, that really highlights the fact that the philosophy of defunding and deprosecution equals a rise in crime, right? That's very clear. But Director McVeigh, you talked about Part 1 crime earlier. Are you seeing the same trend with the Part 2 crimes? Obviously, Part 1 crime is more serious. Are you seeing the same trends with Part 2?
Our Part 2 crime has dropped over the last year or two, but the Part 1's... I'm sorry. I apologize. Our Part 2 has declined, but in the past 5 years, we've seen a steady increase in the Part 1 crimes, which are obviously the more serious of crimes that we all worry about.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Hogan.
Thank you, Chairman. So I have two questions. The first one, and I'm hoping with your experience you can kind of shed some light on it. When I look at the crimes that are occurring in Philadelphia, it seems like, especially the violent crimes, the murder, the assaults, things like that, it appears to be primarily younger people. And I know I look young, but I am in my 30s. And it's, believe it or not, Chairman, and I do have a lot of gray hair. It's this job. But it seems like it's primarily younger people in Philadelphia. And even, I mean, we had the horrible incident where the Temple police officer was murdered by actually a Bucks County resident, but he was only, I believe, 18 or 19 years old. Are we seeing in Bucks County the same type of almost younger people committing these crimes that I'm observing? And I don't know if it's accurate, but that's what I'm observing when I'm watching the news. I mean, in your routine arrests or your law enforcement activities, are you seeing an increase in younger individuals committing these crimes?
Okay, you want to go first? I'll go first. In Northampton Township, we primarily deal with property crimes. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of violent crime. However, I can say I have noticed over the last few years that officers are being, I'll put it this way, they're being disrespected more and not being shown the courtesy that I think they were normally and commonly shown in the past. Instead of just a typical car stop being, can I see your license, registration, insurance card? Officers now, over the last few years, will sometimes get a why. What did I do? Instead of just adhering to what the officer is requesting, normal car stops can turn into debates. And I think that is a little generational, but I think it's also because of a lot of the negative police rhetoric that has been common for the last few years. And as a result, sometimes these incidents will escalate when the motorist or whoever the officer is encountering realizes that the officer is going to get the information that he requires, and normal incidents in the past that were nothing are turning into confrontations with officers instead of people respecting the officer's authority and just doing as the officer asks. And then 99% of the time, the people would normally be released, and it would not be the confrontation that it has become in some cases. And I think that's part of the reason why it's harder to recruit officers today, because people see that officers don't have the level of respect with some groups of people that they had previously.
Thank you. I would say that predominantly, usually 18 to 25 is the range that we see most violent criminals, but we have seen, at least Ben Salem, a significant increase in juveniles with stolen cars that lead to pursuits, that they're up in our township to commit burglaries. In one case this past year, we had a 16-year-old from New York out on bail for homicide, and we caught in a business doing a burglary in a stolen car. So you're just seeing more and more of, there's no fear of consequence, and to your point, people aren't raised to fear, they don't want them to fear the police, but no, if you're caught by the police, you could go to jail. There's a consequence. They just get released in most of these cities so that they don't care. They just go out and do what they want to do. But we're seeing a ton of cars stolen from the city of Philadelphia, dumped in our township, then another car stolen and taken back to the city of Philadelphia. That's routine for our jurisdiction, but we're seeing much younger people do that now, 16, 17 years old, 2 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't make any sense to anyone, but that is what we're dealing with now.
Thank you. The reason I asked that question, and tying back, again, there was a gun store that was robbed in Langhorne. The individuals that were apprehended were all minors. They were 16, 17-year-old teenagers in the middle of the night coming into Bucks County to rob a gun store. So that was alarming to me by itself. But the other question I wanted to have, and it's a little bit of a different topic, I'm hearing from a lot of parents, primarily mothers, that are concerned about school security, and I think recent events. New York Police Department just announced all hands on deck yesterday, or for tomorrow. The leader of Hamas has asked for a day of global jihad tomorrow. Parents are legitimately concerned about school security, and I know there's 3 school districts represented here, and we have good partnerships, I think. I know the sheriff's office is now in part of Central Bucks. What is something that we as legislators at the state level can do to help facilitate those ties to increase school security, not just for the school district itself, but for the law enforcement angle? I know a resource officer is very costly for a school district, but what are some ways from your perspective in law enforcement that we can help with the school security and give parents more peace of mind?
I think one thing to do is to... One thing we can do is be mindful of that a lot of this is media-driven, and that we don't have the, not to say that it can't happen, but we don't have the issues that some other places have. So we do have great relationships with our school districts. In Upper Southampton, we are always in the schools at unscheduled times, doing walkthroughs, talking to kids. So I think, those types of things will provide a level of security. But from your end is to kind of calm the fears of the what might happen, and just know that there are procedures in place to handle situations that could come up. So, more educational than really, school resource officers in every school would be great, but there's a huge cost to that. So, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
I agree with what my colleague said, and I think one difference or additional piece would be funding. The sheriff started this years ago in Bend Sound, but we've had technologies in our schools that we just enhanced this year where we have access to every school camera in the building. Before you had to get permission to access it. But in today's day and age, we want the cop that's responding to a critical incident to be able to go on his laptop or phone and see the threat. So we now have our police officers that have access to every camera in every school. There's a digital map of who accesses it, but we don't want them going in blind. We want them having the best intelligence they can have. So we were fortunate. Some of that funding's through our representative, Casey Tomlinson, but you don't see that in a lot of districts where even the superintendents would agree to that, or the school boards would agree because they feel it's too intrusive on the kids. Well, I don't think so at all. I think we want the police to be able to respond as quickly and effectively as we can if there's, God forbid, a critical incident. We have to get over that privacy concern that, well, the police can look in a hallway or the dispatcher can access a camera. We're doing it for the right reasons, and we're fortunate that our superintendent and school board have bought into public safety as the priority first. So through legislation, through education, and funding, I think it does bring it all together to make for a safer environment.
Northampton's in Council Rock School District. We do have an excellent relationship with the school district, a strong relationship with the superintendent and his staff. We do meet monthly for a risk assessment meeting. We also routinely meet with the security director for Council Rock School District as well as his staff. Those meetings are important. Information sharing is important. Getting information out to parents when there is an incident or a potential incident. I think communication is the key. As far as funding, my opinion is the funding that would go the furthest towards school security would be either supplementing school security staffing, and I know Council Rock has increased their staffing, and SROs. Right now we have one SRO in our high school. And it's no secret that I have been requesting an SRO in the middle school, Holland Middle School, for some time now. And I know I have a lot of agreement with people in the field, but I'm not sure how much funding is an issue. And the school district does pay 50% of the SRO's salary. So it's a shared cost, but it is still a cost. And I think at minimum we should have officers in the middle schools and in the high schools, and there as support to the security personnel that are in the school, to build relationships with the school staff and also with the children, and just be there as a deterrent, not because they're there to arrest students for doing wrongs. The security staff can handle that, but to be there as primarily a deterrent for the school students, and also give a little bit of peace of mind to the parents, because I know a lot of the parents in Council Rock, they did a survey. They were very concerned. That was one of their primary concerns, school security. Thank you.
If I can, real quick. I know I'm here with the catalytic converter thefts, but being the past director of school security for the only all-girls private collegiate high school in Philadelphia, I had a chance to deal with Villa Joseph Marie, which is here in Northampton Township, Conwell Egan, Archbishop Wood. There should be some thought taken to the private schools that are out there with regards to grant money possibly, and additional type of programs that can be discussed or worked on to help provide them with additional resources on the private school level.
Thank you all. Representative Labs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your testimony. I just wanted to focus on the mail theft component for a moment. I know many of us up here host scam jams and consumer protection events, and that's something big that's focused on. The education component of that, walking your mail into the building, using the gel pens, not putting mail with the red flag in your mailbox, things like that, just really to make constituents aware of this growing problem. So I guess my question is, and I know my colleagues up here have legislation, Porch Pirates legislation. So Do you think that the public awareness is helping in this matter to kind of bring it to the forefront, make people aware? And do you think that it's a combination of public awareness and legislation that can kind of make this better?
I think public awareness is the most important thing, because the more information that we put out to people, the better off, the more equipped they are to handle it. I know in Upper Southampton, we're dealing with the same things with the porch pirates, and I mean, blatantly pulling up to mailboxes and dropping things inside the mailboxes and just pulling as much mail out as they can right in the middle of the day. So, I mean, legislative enforcement, if you're there for the enforcement piece, that's great, you'll catch them, but what's the chance? It's hit or miss. So I think the most important thing is to just keep relaying information out to people, however we can do that. With the elderly population that we start to see, we're seeing great numbers of frauds because they think they won the Nigerian jackpot. Well, if you didn't enter it, you didn't win it. So, if information is put out about those things, maybe they won't fall victim to that particular scam. So the more information that we can share with you and you can put out to constituents is the best way to handle it, I feel.
I agree. Education is the way to go on this. We have a social media page, and we are constantly putting out information on how to prevent mail theft. What we put out so far was we tell our residents if they're going to write a check, use the security pen, use the security check. However, they are still taking the checks and copying them and making new checks, even if it's a secure check. So it's not foolproof. We have been telling our residents not to put the flags up on their mailboxes. It's a shame that some of our residents that may not be as mobile are being told to take their mail into the post office as opposed to outside the post office, where we've had mail stolen from the mailbox outside of the post office. It's a serious problem, and no one wants to feel that the U.S. mail system is not safe and lacks the integrity necessary for them to get their parcel or package from point A to point B. It's a very serious problem, and we've been addressing it locally, and if it can be addressed statewide and through legislation, I think that would just reinforce the message.
Thank you.
Representative Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, first of all, let me thank you all for being here. Thank you for all of the hard work that you do. I think there's been a recurring theme that we've heard about the public perception, right, that tends to be pushed from a certain side of the ideological divide. The good sheriff referenced earlier about how you can have 0.01% of a workforce be a bad actor, and they get 99% of the media coverage, right? The 99.9% of the law enforcement officers that are the good actors, that are doing their good work every single day, they're the unsung heroes, right? They don't get the equal amount of media coverage for all the good that they do that the 0.01% gets for being that one bad actor. And I want to say that you guys are really fortunate here. You do have very strong advocates in Harrisburg. The Bucks County delegation is definitely the largest and loudest advocates for law and order, for law enforcement. So you guys are very fortunate there. But I wanted to ask you, by comparison, in Philadelphia, we have this culture of crime that D.A. Krasner has really cultivated, whether decriminalizing retail thefts or, as Representative Stats earlier alluded to, just simply not enforcing the laws on the books, but then asking there for to be more laws that he won't still enforce. So my question to you, the sheriff referenced the workforce shortage that Philadelphia is seeing, where they are unable to deal with a case from 3 months ago because they had 3 shootings, 3 days ago. And that's the sort of thing that is forcing this exodus from Philadelphia. I think, Director McVeigh, I read your memo, and you referenced that some of your finest suburban officers are actually officers that have given up, that have left Philadelphia. So from a cultural perspective, what is that doing to the Philadelphia police force? What are they having to do? Are they having to add overtime? Are they short-staffed? What does that mean when you have less cars on the street, less patrols? And what would happen to Bucks County if that culture of crime that DA Krasner has cultivated was allowed to spill over here?
I'll take that one. Thank God we have a DA, Matt Weintraub, and soon to be Jen Shorn, that will absolutely not allow that. But the voters got to know that they can never allow that, because that's who put Krasner in office. But I would say in terms of crime and the police department, I speak to a lot of executives in Philadelphia. They're obviously short, I think, 1,000 or so officers right now. Less police means more crime. I know some people don't like to hear that, but more police means less crime. The police do deter a lot of crime. That's the main job of police. You can't measure that. But when you take them away, crime does rise. That's been proven over time. So I think, and for us, when we see Philadelphia officers leaving, it's because they don't have leaders and elected officials to support them. They're not able to do the job. Most of the applicants we've hired, a dozen or so in the past few years, we let them be police officers, meaning we let them stop cars, we let them make arrests. The DA's office prosecutes the case. These guys in Philly will make multiple gun arrests, taking guns off the street, to then have the case suppressed or not prosecuted because they don't think it was done appropriately. But if you look at the Constitution, it was. Stop and frisk, no one wants to hear it, but, we can do that. You should do that legally. That prevents murders, prevents shootings. But that has a bad taste in Philadelphia where they discourage that. So if they let the police be police there, I think people would stop leaving. It's obviously a very big department. The police officers are excellent there. Anything I've written or said has nothing to do against the police. It's about the system that they're functioning within. It's broken. And obviously, I thank all of you for what you're doing because it can help fix that. And I'm hoping we see a change in the coming months with a new mayor there and new leadership that can right the ship in Philadelphia, because if they keep leaving, it's where you're really going to see the change is that 5 to 10, 15 years, they're losing a lot of their best police officers. They're the future leaders. So I don't know how it's going to be down the road. So they need to do something to keep their talent to stay in Philadelphia and not come and benefit our departments, but they need to focus on keeping talent. So I don't know if that answered it, but that's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
The 7th district, which is a district in the city of Philadelphia, it's a quieter district. They had one officer the other night to respond to calls for service. They were asking for assistance, if need be, from Bucks County because we are so close to them. They had one officer on the street. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. In a city, that should not happen. And I hired 2 officers last night, and one officer is a 5-year veteran of the city of Philadelphia, and the other officer is a 2-year officer from SEPTA. So they're leaving in droves because it's not because they can't do the job. It's not because they don't want to do the job. They are paralyzed. They can't do the job. And the ones who try to do the job, as Director McVeigh said, the cases get tossed out. Evidence, they actually have a list that's a no-call list, meaning that officers are placed on this list if they get evidence that's suppressed and there's nothing wrong with these officers. They're not doing anything wrong. Their cases are being tossed out because the judges are not holding the criminal accountable and putting it on the police officers. It's not fair. If I worked in the city, I'd be trying to get out too.
Do any Bucks County departments have mutual aid agreements with the Philadelphia department?
So in Bensound, we keep a very strong relationship with the Philadelphia Police Department. We train with their K-9 unit, with their motorcycle unit. We were just, when the unrest started a few weeks ago, we assisted them. We had officers at Franklin Mills to stage that area because they were depleted with their manpower. And we know if we don't stop them there, they would be in our municipality. So we do have multiple agreements with the city of Philadelphia. And like I said, anything I say is no reflection on the great work that the men and women do in this city. So we still do support them. But the sheriff mentioned this earlier. earlier, we do have hesitation. Many of our investigations lead us, especially violent crime, back to the city of Philadelphia. So we're very careful about who we allow to go in there, making sure there's supervision, and we have a coordinated effort with our federal partners and or the Philadelphia people so that we don't want our officers getting judged by District Attorney Krasner, because I don't think it's done very fairly the way I see it play out right now. So we're very cautious about that.
You know, I have to touch, I live in the 7th District, so I can attest to what the chief said. I have friends, brothers and sisters of mine that are still on the street working in the city. I live in that district. I live about less than a quarter mile from lower Southampton Township, the border. There are nights when there's 1 and 2 cars working. So you're talking a 15 square mile district, the 8th District bordering Ben Salem or the 7th bordering lower South and upper South. And 15 square miles, 100,000 people, 2 cars working.
Well, again, thank you guys very much. Anything we can do to support you guys, please reach out anytime. Thank you.
You're 100% right.
Thank you, Chairman. As the brother to a police officer, I really appreciate all of the law enforcement presence that we've had this morning. Thank you all for coming out and sharing your testimony. My question, however, will be directed to the private sector. So, Director, it will be given to you. Briefly in context, we see the damage that this soft on crime policy train has created. And we don't need to look far or theorize for the next stop, right? We can look to our friends to the west of this country in San Francisco, where you have luxury retailers like Nordstrom closing up shop and leaving. You have essential services like pharmacies such as Walgreens closing stores, not to reopen. So in your testimony, you spoke to the positive impact that BIMBO has not only on the Commonwealth, but in our communities. The trickle-down effect that the family-sustaining jobs provide, the food products that provide nutrition to the children in our neighborhoods. When does it become economically unsustainable to remain in these geographies? And is that conversation happening at BIMBO? Director, if you will, can you expand on what that would mean for Pennsylvania and that economic impact if you guys reach that point where you need to look away?
I'm limited on being able to touch on that with you. I can say, you know, geographically, and you can fill in the blanks for yourself, the facilities that we have. So we have facilities in Reading, in the city of Reading, facilities that border the city and county of Philadelphia. They're not in the city and county of Philadelphia. They're in Ben Salem. They're in Plymouth Township, Montgomery County. One of them was and it is closed in Aston, Delaware County. So, and that's pretty true for I mean, logistically, we have to look at highways, turnpikes, you know, where the distribution, the transportation avenue of things is coming and going. So pretty much the facilities that are there, I mean, we're building new ones. We just built one up in Albertus, out in Lehigh County, and there's another one up in Allenwood. That's a major distribution center. But we have to look at it logistically for the communities and the people that we serve up and down, whether it's the East Coast, the central part of the country, or the western part of the country. So, I mean, they do look at crime stats. The real estate, you know, and that's why I can't touch on that too much with regard to real estate and operations. They do look at the crime stats in areas. They study that. They sit at the table when they're looking at buying a property and go over that. So I would imagine at some point it could affect certain communities. I don't know how much it would affect Pennsylvania. I can't speak on that right now. But it is a good question that you asked.
I appreciate that, Director. I think it's clear that actions speak louder than words, and we can see the press releases that say Pennsylvania is open for business, but clearly when we have allies in the private sector that wish to bring family-sustaining jobs to the Commonwealth, provide nutrition to our communities and our neighborhoods, having to evaluate the statistics that we've reviewed and discussed today, Pennsylvania being open for business, that's a lot of words, but I think it's clear where the action needs to get behind. Thank you.
I will say this, just to add to that real quick. You know, we have locations in Burlington, New Jersey, right over the bridge. So some routes have been moved to that location. And, you know, you brought up a good point. And you look at the traveling, the tolls, the mileage, the gas, and those routes service maybe the Philadelphia metropolitan region. Well, they're Burlington County. And it might be because of, it might not be because of what we're discussing, but again, sometimes you can read between the lines and see, you know, what you have to do as a company and the decisions you have to make to not only be profitable, but if you heard earlier that I said, you know, 20 million pounds of food we're donating, and that's just to Feeding America. That's not including everybody else. The nonprofit organizations, churches, food banks. So we have to give back. But in order to do that, you have to be somewhat profitable. And when you're getting taken out, you know, every 3 weekends, you know, every third weekend, you have 10 trucks hit with catalytic converters. You know, it kind of starts to cripple you a little bit.
All right. I think that is all that we have for questions. I just want to say thank you to all the testifiers. The level of professionalism that I always see when I talk to my Bucks County colleagues or come to Bucks County is always remarkable. And on quick notice, this hearing was supposed to be last Thursday. Had to change it, had to pivot. Everyone stuck together with it and got it done. And I think we had a great hearing. And just wanted to say thank you to the testifiers. Thank you as well to the audience. Clearly, this issue matters a lot to the people here in Bucks County. And I think it's also a good show of force for our Bucks County delegation, the way you guys are leading on issues that matter to your communities. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Representative Marcel and then Representative Tomlinson for some closing remarks, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chairman Kale, and thank you to Representative Tomlinson for doing this important hearing within our area. We're so pleased that Northampton Township was able to help us to have this hearing today at their facility. Wanted to thank the community members that came out, the testifiers who provided such strong information to us to really let us know what's going on in the communities. A thank you to all of the members that joined us today and drove a number of hours to get here and to learn a little bit more about Bucks County and what's unfortunately what's happening because of Philadelphia. What really struck me today was when Sheriff Horan said it should be that simple, and I wish that it was. But I really appreciate all of you sharing your perspectives so that hopefully we can make it more simple and we can do the things that you need us to. Your perspectives and working together with the community, with us, is how I believe we can work together to keep our community safe. So thank you so much, and I'll turn it over to Representative Tomlinson.
There we go. Yeah. First, obviously, thank you to everybody who attended today. Thank you to our testifiers. Despite our challenges, I am very, very proud of how well Bensalem was represented today in testimony. I truly could not be more pleased. And thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to the Policy Committee for traveling out here and joining us in Bucks County. It's clear we have a lot of work to do, and I very much look forward to accomplishing it with you all. So thank you. Thank you, Chairman Kell.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. One thing I just want to highlight before we do close it here is these issues that we're talking about today, these representatives that are up here today advocating to solving these issues, this isn't a political wind type of thing. They're not just out there feeling which way the wind's blowing and going with it. They have been advocates for these issues for years, and they're people that were in office before them were advocates for these issues. I think it's important to note that just because something is popular at a certain point in time, it's important to understand why we are where we are, why people don't want to be police officers, who was advocating against them just a couple of years ago, and who has always stood with them. And our caucus, this committee, we will always stand with our law enforcement, and we appreciate the work that you all do every single day to keep us safe. So thank you for being here. Thank you for testifying. Thank you for what you do. Our next hearing, Bridging the Gap, is on repairing our infrastructure. It'll be next Thursday, October 19th, with Representative Wendy Fink in the Northampton Township Building to discuss the necessity of bridge maintenance in the region and to better understand the metrics used by PennDOT to determine maintenance schedules. Until then, this committee is adjourned and this hearing is adjourned. Yep.